Hello, hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? How's it going? How's it going? Gonna be doing some more RuneScape. Oh shit, we only have fucking 7% left. Oh wait. Yeah, we're gonna watch some YouTube videos. And yeah, and continue on with this winter, Todd. I can probably just walk back in there now at this point. Alright, so let's start off with, see, what should we I actually want to see what this is about.
I stopped watching you around the time when your videos pretty much all began with, remember guys, conservatives hate you and they want you dead.
Yeah, that's still true.
Okay, okay, no, that's, again, that's exaggerative. And you know it's exaggerative. It's okay to point out the extremism, but I don't think you need to take it to that level.
Well, I don't mean literally every conservative in America hates you and wants you dead. I'm referring to a general tendency. Yes, that is true. But I think the hyperbole is justified. And well-reasoned and proportioned within the circumstances. I do think that the conservative movement is ideologically aligned against the well-being of many minority communities in this country, and that the logic of their attitude towards those communities is fundamentally a genocidal one. Mostly the trans community. That's the main one.
Okay, yes. Fundamentally a genocidal attitude. Yeah, sure. But when you say things like that, it turns conservatives away. It turns liberals away, probably. It speaks to your audience, your far left audience, and I just don't think it really is helpful in the grand scheme of things.
Do you understand how you might be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit when you're saying stuff like, okay, I agree that there are these bad tendencies on the right, but by pointing them out, you're actually somehow hurting our movement? Like, this is what conservatives
no, because you're not just pointing them out, you're bringing it all the way to, oh, yeah, Republicans want you dead.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
should I lie?
even if you're just referring to like the Republicans in the Senate, don't you see how that's kind of like counterintuitive?
No, the Republican Party right now is organized behind the narrative that trans people and people supportive of trans people are groomers, pedophiles. Mass labeling a minority demographic as pedophilic is not only an easy precursor to genocide, but a not new one. It's not like it's not that uncommon. Obviously, once you've essentially you're saying like this entire demographic is not only a social contagion, which they believe, of course, because they try to keep it from spreading to their kids. They've been doing that since the 70s with gay people. They also believe that trans people are part of like an organized elite liberal academic effort to transgender their children. It sounds silly when I say it like that, but that is literally what they say and believe. Like,
bruh.
Like the speech and the laws put forward by these officials, voted on by their constituents, reflects that belief. This language only makes sense as a precursor to genocide. There's no context in which you would introduce hundreds of local bills trying to, on every level, like everything you can do within the purview of the law, to strip them of their rights medically, legally, socially, and then frame them as child molesters, as a group, and then that not lead to some kind of like broader violence against them, which already exists, of course, in its own extent, but it can only get worse. It can get worse from here. So in that context, I think, they hate you and they want you dead is a pretty reasonable thing to say. Of course, I don't literally mean no conservatives can be moved over, but like that's what the movement's doing,
Okay, well, no, I wouldn't characterize that as they want you dead. It's they want to strip you of all your legal rights and socially ostracize you.
Well,
I don't
Hold
really,
on. Calling somebody a pedophile is definitely going to
genocide is
raise
coming
some
from that.
why? Okay,
some
out of
level of
curiosity, what makes you
gravity
think? What makes
to
you
like
think
hating
that,
somebody,
the,
you know?
this doesn't lead to mass death?
I think it does. It leads to a uptick in political violence, and it leads to probably a higher rate of suicidality.
Okay. I mean, if we follow in the line of examples of previous times that far right movements have led a social crusade against what they perceive to be degeneracy against the state, like, you know, if they like achieve the political power they want, don't you think it's kind of reasonable that Republicans might start, I don't know, arresting people who are trans, like en masse, or sending them over to constructed forced conversion camps? Because they've talked about that as well, you know, the idea that transgenderism is a social contagion and that it needs to be cured. Like, that's not an uncommon attitude in a lot of these conservative circles.
Yeah, and that, again, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we don't get to that point. I hope that we can deter the power of the Republicans. I hope that the courts can change for the better. I hope Biden can put in some more Supreme Court judges. Like,
well, I agree. I hope for those things too. Sure. We don't know how this country is going to be situated a couple years from now. We don't know how much of a legal barrier there's going to be between Republicans and genocide. Proper, real genocide. At any rate, I think that just trying to force trans people into being second-class citizens itself is plenty justification for saying stuff like, they hate you and they want you dead. But I guess, like, I have to lay this on the conservatives, you know? If they don't want me saying that, then they shouldn't, you know, lead a nationwide effort to ostracize a minority group. It's reasonable to be fearful.
yeah, I agree. It's reasonable to be fearful. I just question your methods of instilling that fear.
It's like the whole
Alright,
like,
well,
oh, they weren't
They
actually
instill the
not
fear.
like
I'm just
like,
pointing out what they're doing.
they're not
I mean,
actually
if
Nazis. They
not
didn't
for
kill
owning
5
guns,
million
I mean,
people,
what
but
are
they
we
could
to do?
also
And
have Nazi
really, the whole,
memorabilia.
they
They can
hate you, they want to kill you
basically
thing. I mean,
enjoy the
Republicans
thought
are
of
really
like
committed to this, you know? I feel
Nazism.
like
Yeah,
It's
and
crazy.
that's what
like
I'm
a
saying.
flippant-
Aren't you
But
just
then like
doing counter extremism in a way?
no, telling trans people to buy guns to defend their lives against state oppression is not the same as trying to do a genocide against trans people. Those are incomparable degrees of extremism.
Oh, okay. So wait. Is it for state oppression or is it for
Or
conservative militias?
Far-right militia group, state oppression, either or. I don't think they're comparable to encouraging trans people to buy guns.
conservatives
to defend
will
themselves
literally
and such.
change the
Okay,
goalposts
and again, like,
no matter
how
what.
is state oppression, like, how
Once
are
they get
owning
that
guns
little
gonna help that?
Well,
win,
How
they'll
that's
push
how
that
is owning
complicated,
goalpost
but I
guns
do want to
immediately
indicate,
back.
again, these are not two comparable forms of extremism. The extermination
How is
of a
owning guns going to
minority-
help from psychotherapy, from putting trans people in jail? Like, how are even going the full extent of like death camps? Like, how is simply owning gun? That's the conservative logic, that we're going to need guns to protect from a tyrannical government. A tyrannical government doesn't care if you own guns.
No, the officers they send to your door do, though.
All right. I mean,
wait. You just
I,
wait. You
I'd
brought
like
up.
to see. I'd
You
like to
brought
see
up.
some
You brought
data
up
on
them
that.
sending you to death camps. Wait, am I the extremist here? What, like, if the Gestapo come to drag the Jews to the train yards, like, should the Jew have a gun? Sure. Like, what? Yeah. Yeah. Sure. What's gonna save them here? You know, it's not like them not having a gun is going to save them. You know. Yeah.
Well,
if things get
again,
if things get that bad, then at that point, yeah, it's pretty much going to be a bloodbath, no matter how you handle it. Ideally, things don't reach the literal death camp level, you know. Hopefully, I don't think any of us want that. Well, any of us in present company. There are Republicans who want that, of course, and they're fighting for it every day. Yeah, hopefully not.
all right. I guess I have nothing really left to say. I was gonna bring up something you said like 3 years ago, but I don't see how it's gonna change anything from this conversation right now. I guess.
But I want to
just
ask you. I just want to know, like, if there is like some giant like state genocide, or like right-wing militias, or like marauding the country or whatever, like some shit like that. What? So we shouldn't own guns then? Like, what do we do? Just give up?
I would say that would be a case where we can probably start talking about some direct action.
You can't start talking about it after it's already happened, though, right? Like, you need to have already talked about it.
No, but there are better methods of preventing that from happening, is what I'm saying.
Sure, and I agree with that. Legislative stuff is generally more effective, but you can do both. Like, you
can't
can do
that
the
if they're
legislative stuff.
the
You can
oppressors
also,
are
like,
in.
I don't know, stockpile a fuck ton of ammunition. They're not mutually exclusive. You just buy the
If the oppressors are in positions of power, you're not going to just legislate shit away.
I still disagree with you there.
This is an opinion you can trust from Rhonda Schwab, the owner of a BBB-accredited kayak repair shop.
Just because I just can't circumnavigate the idea that owning guns is more of a harm to citizens than not.
Well, do you agree
just in a general sense?
Do you agree that it would be effective if far-right militias were trying to prey on liberal inner-city areas in like social crisis?
I suppose it could help in certain instances, yes.
Because for me, that's the big one.
I don't think that would stop it from happening.
Well, that's the big one for me, because like so far-right militias represent a tiny minority of people in this country, right? But guns are a force multiplier. A block, like if you have like 10 guys in 2 trucks, like far-right dudes, Patriot Prayer, whatever, neo-Nazis, and they want to like occupy a city block of Portland or something, you know, like you've got 5-over-1s, it's like a majority minority community. If they drive through there and like nobody in that neighborhood has a gun, they can do whatever they want. If you have a gun, you have infinite power over people who don't in a situation like that. That's just how it is. But if there are people in that neighborhood who do have guns, like they have no idea which of the hundreds of windows facing the street have rifles aimed through them. That right there is like a hard stop on occupation. Cities are almost impossible to occupy unless you have like heavy equipment, because unless you have like an armored vehicle or tanks or whatever, like shit the military has, like you cannot just drive through a city street and not get reduced to mincemeat from the people who you're trying to shoot first, because they're in the buildings and you're not, you know? It's like a really effective. So for me, like that's the thing. Like if they ever trying to start like shoot up a neighborhood or something, just a few people in that neighborhood having guns makes a huge difference. And that's like a community defense thing too. It's not like an interpersonal, like go out there and be Rambo type thing. You know, it's like get to know your neighbors. You know, if anything bad ever happens, like does one of us have a gun? That kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that seems like it's a very specific situation that would need to happen. But
any kind of occupation short of full-on military occupation would be covered by that, I think. I mean, obviously, if people start bringing in, like, you know, if, like, fighter jets are flying over the city, like, obviously, at that point, you know, you can't, you know, gun ownership's not going to do much for you.
I just think it shouldn't be a citizen's duty to own a gun and protect their community like that.
Well, I agree that it's bad that we're put in this situation. I don't want to be in this situation. But if the state fails to you know uphold this responsibility, then it's better to have a fallback than to just you know, like shrug our shoulders and go like, oh yeah, well they fucked over, so we're fucked.
Yes, we get to also watch Hassan.
Mildly infuriating.
Oh no!
A Joe car moment. Oh,
this is gonna be fun.
This is gonna break you. Oh no!
As a real estate guy, I can make millions of dollars and use the exact same tax loopholes that a Donald Trump would use and pay effectively no tax. And does that make me a bad guy, or did I just start?
Yes.
Yes. It just makes you a bad guy. Makes the system bad. It makes everything bad. Automatically, dude. It's like the moment that you're like, I love being a landlord. It's the greatest thing. I'm like, nope, not a good person. Sorry. I tell this to my friends who want to become landlords. I'm like, don't do it. It's terrible.
Step forward if you agree. Being poor is a choice.
I do not want to be disingenuous.
No! Are you okay, dude? No. This video will cause me to get banned. Oh my god. Oh my god. I will blow up. I will explode. I will spontaneously
Question
combust.
one, he's already fucking molding.
What the kind of take is this, dude? Are you a teacher in Oklahoma that literally has to scrounge up as many little dollars as you can on the side to make sure that you buy your own school supplies because the state hasn't raised your income in like 2 generations, and you have to actually find yourself doing Uber rides at night in an effort to make sure that your kids aren't eating top ramen every night? Well, guess what? You're poor because it's your f***ing choice to be poor. Why don't you choose to be rich? Why don't you choose to just not be poor? What a stupid person you are, you poor bitch. Go on Indeed.com and push the Indeed slider to a fucking teaching profession that actually pays you a living wage. Let's not even consider the fucking reality that the budget shortfall is straight up baked into your existence, okay? That like childcare, car payments, and all this other shit makes living as a poor person incredibly fucking expensive. But fuck that, dude. Hey, it's just a mindset, dog. Why don't you get the fucking alpha brain rich person mindset? All of a sudden, you'll be rich, dude. Yeah, totally. Great fucking take. One of them is a poor person, too. Maybe that person is poor by design, okay? By choice, because they were too fucking stupid and literally thinks being poor is a choice.
I feel like it's 2021 and there's a lot of free resources. I mean, Facebook has a lot of free courses.
Oh,
I
dude,
think that
MLM. MLM.
Oh,
That's
my.
an MLM Andy. That's a fucking Avalon, Herbalife,
Herbalife.
Andy right here. Straight the fuck up.
Fucking
No, I don't
Herbalife
mean
Andy.
Marxist Leninist Maoist, by the way. 100% is a Herbalife
Everybody-
lady.
there's also
Everybody in that
mindset.
chat's like, yeah,
Most people
MLM.
in general don't choose to be poor, but since I've been here specifically in LA, a lot of
MLM,
people
man.
outside, they don't want to come into the shelter because they rather be in the
Catching.
tents.
Oh my
I
god.
mean, I grew up poor,
Okay.
so I have been on both sides of the coin,
Okay.
and I can reflect and look back on some of the lifestyle choices that I was
Yeah.
making, some of the people that I was hanging around. So
Yeah.
I don't think that people can initially control if they're born into poverty,
Right.
but I think that there is a certain level of control that comes along with being able to have that determination and that resilience.
Yeah, dude, being poor is a mindset. Also, people choose not to be inside of homeless shelters. They choose to fucking literally live in tents and eat trash instead. But I will not examine what kind of systemic failures that represents and instead just say, oh, you're choosing to fucking live in a tent and eat shit and trash. Let's not examine the systemic problems that that fucking presents in and of itself.
We need to realize that
True. Very
these
true.
people are on the street not because of their own choosing, but
This
because
is kind of funny. David, poor. Broke boy. David, broke boy.
some people don't even want to be rich.
I feel like
wanna be
David's
rich.
been in a
Like,
couple of
but I
these
also don't
Jubilee
wanna be
episodes,
poor.
to be honest
I'm
with you.
in the middle, and I would want to live in society where they could perpetuate
Maybe
people
not.
to make them
I respect this dude. This guy's awesome. This fucking dude is dope. I totally understand. He's right. It's like, you don't want to be rich. You don't want to be poor. The most important fucking thing for me specifically, as well as people like this, is the fact that you want to be comfortable. You want freedom. I care about being able to continue doing what I do no matter what. I care about the freedom that I have because of this community from sponsorships that I don't need to take. I care about not having to stop myself, not having to censor myself, having all complete editorial freedom with the knowledge that I can fucking go around, say whatever the fuck I want, even if it is against people in powerful places, people in positions of power, or even when it's like completely against the common attitude that the overwhelming majority holds on to, like it's a fucking fact of life. I would not be able to do that if I did not have the financial independence and security by having a community like this offers. Yeah, like the fucking Crackergate saga. Yes, like using the term
Billionaires should not exist.
I don't see how anyone could ever spend $1 billion. It's not a necessity to have that much money, and I feel like there is a certain cap in which you can completely survive and thrive with this amount of money, and then if you surpass that, you're just hoarding.
And then we've seen what people with billions of dollars are doing with their money. They're going to space for fun. Like,
Right.
clearly,
bro, the existence of billionaires is an indication that there is a systemic failure, just like every single homeless person is in the exact same way an indication of systemic failures, a policy failure. The level of wealth hoarding that these people engage in is absolutely unimaginably psychotic. It is insane.
When you look at a lot of billionaires who have gotten that way because of the just incredible amount of value they've given to society, I won't even talk about a huge, crazy billionaire. I'll talk about Jay-Z, who's a billionaire. He made amazing music. That's how he became a billionaire.
Dog, what about you? You're literally a fucking landlord. Also, Jay-Z didn't become a billionaire because he fucking made music. He became a billionaire because he owns a fuckload of brands and shit.
I completely disagree. I feel like that is the government's job. And Jay-Z, like you said, Jay-Z made his money from music. That's his labor. He's a musician. He's selling his talent. But then when he invested in alcohol, then he's using other people who are harvesting the wheat, the agave. They're breaking their back. They're using their labor.
So do you think that he shouldn't invest in those people?
What about the jobs?
What do you mean?
They're having jobs.
Yeah, but how much are they getting paid for the jobs? Or those jobs in the third world where they're getting big pennies,
Yeah,
and then
versus
Jay-Z
no
makes
job.
millions off their labor.
How many people?
This dude's awesome, and he's right. And anyone who fucking
Imagine-
talks about it,
imagine being
sincere or
like, yeah,
not,
but, like,
is
no
literally
job.
fucking a dumbass. His
Or like a
worldview
better
is
job,
more
you know?
aligned with your own personal interests, whether you recognize it or not. Some of your daddies and mommies might be like fucking an owner of like a fucking, I don't know, used car dealership or some shit. But ultimately, most of you, straight the fuck up, are going to benefit from more people believing this exact same thing and advocating for this exact same idea. Such a brain dead argument. Well, at least my slaves are fed. If I wasn't there, they would starve. Yeah, 100%. It's the same exact argument. It's not just the money that's the issue. It's the power they hold over everyone else. They will inevitably tilt the scales towards them. I don't really give a shit about some jackass buying a yacht. Yeah, I am a hedonist. I don't personally give a fuck about people buying dumb shit. Or my entertainment largely revolves around streaming for 8 hours to people that I may never actually meet. That's how I entertain myself, but I personally understand how some people like to fucking consume commodities. I like to consume commodities every now and then as well, and sometimes even do drugs or alcohol. So there's that. I get that reality. I don't give a shit about that. It is more so the wealth hoarding, creating a system that is completely unbalanced, that perpetuates that same cycle of structural violence in the form of poverty. That's the issue.
People.
Oh, fuck you, you ad.
People who make $1 billion get a fraction of the value they create. Everybody here who has a business understands that. Even Jay-Z only gets 15 cents a record he sells.
That's because he got exploited by the record label who's using his label to make money. It's the same
you
thing
keep using this word
when he
exploiting like
invests.
you understand the record business of
No,
which I am.
no, he's
Record
using the
labels
word
back
exploiting like he
hundreds of
knows
artists.
what the
Do you know
word
how many go
exploiting
bust,
means.
though? Okay, they're taking risk. In
Oh my god,
They're
this
taking
dude is
risk.
not gonna say the record industry is not like. First of all, there's exploitation in the Marxist sense, which is the extraction of surplus labor value, the company taking more than you actually fucking put in the form of work, right? That's called profits. That's the Marxist understanding of exploitation. But then there's even the exploitation that capitalists understand, right? Like the colloquial understanding of exploitation, which record labels are
Literally
fucking
do.
famous for doing.
Yeah.
You got slavery, and then you got record label 360 deals.
Yep.
Straight the fuck up. It's not even a joke. It's like the most contemporary example of exploitation that everyone agrees on. Even capitalists. Like most capitalists will look to what record labels do and they're like, well, that's fucked up, bro. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. And this motherfucker is defending that shit.
Yeah, that's
It is
fucking
the most
dumb.
predatory fucking industry, dude. I have a song with almost 10 million plays. I own less than 10%. Record labels are dog shit.
The
Is that
tapes
Carter?
pay the engineers,
Carter in his chat?
marketing, etc. They're exploiting them. They're taking on a bet.
Yeah, dude, they're taking on a bet. Meanwhile, the guy who like actually fucking produced the music while living out of his car, that guy, what was he doing? He was in the lap of luxury, right? Dumbass. That guy's taking the real fucking bet. And most importantly, fuck the bet. That guy is literally putting his life on the line and also making the material. So suck my dick. What kind of bets would you take if there was no fucking artist to sign on a fucking insane 360 deal, okay? None. You would be taking no bets because you'd be fucked. You'd be looking for like AI to produce music or some shit. Yo, that sucks, dude. That is so fucking lame.
Just give everybody 50-50, they'll go bankrupt.
Oh my god, if they give everybody 50-50, they'll go bankrupt? What kind of fuck? Okay, then they deserve to go bankrupt. What kind of fucking idiotic take is this? So what? Just because they're taking a fucking bet? Some people make $10, give him 50% of the $10. Some people make $1 million, give him 50% of $1 million. Why is it like predatory lending? The way that like record labels have to survive. There is not a single fucking musician that'll be like, oh yeah, I love record labels. Actually, they're great. I've never met a single fucking musician that's like record labels are
Record
tight.
labels
Maybe
are
indie
legitimately
record labels
shit.
that are owned by other musicians, but beyond that, most of them get acquired by the 3 big ones anyway and become dog shit regardless. And even indie record labels are fucking bad usually.
I actually want to ask a question of how you define exploited and why you're saying that.
I'm using exploited in the Marxian term where Your labor creates value, and then your employer
I
takes
love
that
this dude. This dude is fucking based. He's
Yeah.
awesome.
value and distributes it unevenly to themselves, and then leaves the rest for the workers. That's exploitation.
The economy is rigged.
If you're born in a rich family, you have more opportunities. And as someone who is poor, living paycheck to paycheck, you're stuck having to apply to jobs and settle.
Bro, how the fuck do people not universally agree that the economy is rigged? You can say that the economy is rigged and like benefits rich people, but that kind of wealth hoarding is actually overall a good thing. You can say that the economy is rigged, but it's not a good thing, obviously. But this notion that the economy isn't rigged is a silly one. Okay, how the fuck do you believe in such nonsensical bullshit?
I agree and disagree. I agree that it's rigged to incentivize certain areas and behaviors, like we have millions and millions of farm subsidies, so it supports agribusiness.
What the fuck? This guy's like, it's rigged, but in all the ways where I'm not making money. It's definitely not rigged in the ways that I'm making money, but definitely rigged in all the other ways. Like, dude, it's rigged. Just say it's rigged.
But who creates the value? It's the workers who create the value.
Listen, there's people who take risk.
He's like, hold
risk
on,
money.
hold
That's
on there.
creating value. What you discount is the person willing to risk their savings and provide capital for that venture and to be paid last. So if it goes busto, the worker still gets paid.
Bro, dude.
No, it
take
doesn't. No,
all
he
the
doesn't.
guys-
The worker,
take
if
this
it goes
guy's
bust,
money
then
in
the
its
worker's
entirety.
done.
He keeps saying busto, and I fucking hate that, okay? Straight up. If you're saying busto, I'm taking all your money. He said busto like 8 times, okay? Oh, well, it's busto, buddy. Let me just say something, okay? Hey, you can't fucking cry about risk-taking if you designed the entire economy in a way where you minimize the actual risk. You can't say, yeah, we're risk-taking, and then fucking complain when the government goes and builds fucking Section 8 housing down the street. If you're gonna treat your fucking house as an investment vehicle, well, congratulations, you took a risk and you got fucked, okay? But we don't do that. We never do that because the entire capitalist system is designed in a way where we mitigate the risk for those risk takers, okay? For those who own capital. The largest risk that the capital owner takes is potentially becoming a laborer, a worker again. Because that's what happens. Your fucking shit goes sideways. It goes busto, as this bald man is saying. I can still be baldest, I hope. And what's the unforeseeable, or what's the outcome of that? Okay, if you can't take advantage of the million different things that the government offers you, if you are failing upwards once you get to a certain level of wealth, what do? Do they kill you? Do they take you out back when your business goes fucking
Busto?
What do? Do they take you out back and fucking put one in the back of your head? Do they put you in prison? No. You become a fucking worker. Why is the capital owner afraid of becoming a worker? Well, because they know how the fucking workers are treated under their reign. It's like when racist white people are terrified of becoming a minority. Why? Because they know how they treat minorities, and they're worried that minorities, if they become a majority, will treat them in the same inhumane ways. There's no guarantee that that'll happen, but that's precisely what the fuck rich people are afraid of. You being bald is the equivalent of a white Hispanic being pro-border wall and anti-immigration? Fuck off, dude. Fuck off. A little bit of recession going on, okay?
You discount the role of capital and savings in any type of venture. Like my mom didn't want to be rich. She wanted to be a school teacher and work and do that and live in the middle ground, and that's fine.
Bro, that's so fucking dumb. Oh my god, you're such a piece of shit, dude. Your mom literally busted her fucking ass so you could get a good education and have opportunities that were not provided to her.
That's
and
so
you're over here
fucking
being like, my
dumb.
mom didn't want to make money. That's why she became a school teacher.
I run a hedge fund, I do investments and other things. I manage my own money. How much I make annually? Sometimes I lose money, but I'd say on average over 10 million.
Dude, it doesn't help that they're such like perennial fucking dorks too. It really blows my mind that motherfuckers look to guys like this in a situation like this and go, wow, that guy is poggers. I love that guy. It really does fucking feel weird, you know? I don't understand how the fuck you can look at this guy and go, oh man, he has a hedge fund, poggers.
As a real estate guy, I can make millions of dollars and use the exact same tax loopholes that a Donald Trump would use and pay effectively no tax. And does that make me a bad guy, or did I
Yes.
just study the tax code?
It makes you a bad guy, yeah.
You think so?
If you do that, yeah.
I'm following
definitely.
the law to a T.
The law is wrong. Yeah.
Why is it wrong? It's the
But
law.
I'm not.
Bro, no.
What is the law? law, immediately hit him with fucking slavery. Anytime someone tries to put fucking legality above morality, just hit him with the slavery. Be like, oh yeah, really? That's interesting. Antebellum South, enslaving humans is the law. Freeing black folk is against the law. Kind of weird that you're pro-slavery. Just immediately, just like a gunslinger.
Let's see if he does it.
You go up to
let's see if he does it. He's probably going to do it too, because he's a
slavery. It's legal. Holocaust Germany, legal to put Jewish people in concentration camps. Illegal to break them out. Can't believe you are in support of that. Also, by the way, slavery is still technically legal in America. Lamau, Holocaust Germany. Okay, shut up. I already said I'm stupid. Don, can you enlighten me? When you say slavery is still legal in America, what do you mean? Like wage theft and making people live from paycheck to paycheck? No, dude. No, like literally slavery. The 13th Amendment in the United States Constitution allows you to continue slave labor within prison. Slavery is illegal except for as a punishment for crime. Like, it is weird that people don't know this. It's like so fucking strange.
No, the law is written to encourage investment, is which they want. So he's investing. So like the law is written to encourage certain things. If you disagree with it, you can go lobby and change. But he's not a bad guy.
Just go lobby, forehead. Yeah, that's why I'm launching my lobbying initiative. I'm gonna lobby a bourgeois government to implement socialism through the fucking streaming funds that I've come. It's all gonna work out really well, folks. Let's do it. I'll just do some media share. I'll do like a subathon, and then I'll go lobby the government. Lobbying is just another one of the many functions that a bourgeois government engages in, okay? It's just another way to codify and legalize bribery in a system that already is created to churn out exactly these kinds of results that benefit the mega wealthy. It's idiotic to assume that you could just fucking lobby your way into a better future for the working class, especially when considering how much more money everyone else has. And they certainly don't want your lobbying efforts to work. Also, I love telling a Disney employee that makes 33 grand a year that he just wants to be poor because he hasn't been able to lobby the government. Dog, Disney is so powerful that they have historically created patent laws specifically around their own intellectual property. But even outside of that, like they've literally changed patent laws, okay, regularly to protect Mickey Mouse. Not only that, but also Disneyland was so fucking powerful that in the beginning of COVID, they got Gruesome Gavin, Governor Newsom. They got Group Sex Newsom to fucking literally carve out a specific allowance for Disneyland to not abide by the COVID restrictions in the beginning of the pandemic. Gruesome Gavin Newsom, man most famous for cucking Donald Trump Jr. and also sending me a happy birthday message when I turned 30.
But I mean, I had an epiphany. I literally woke up one day and I was like, I cannot live the rest of my life like this. And I don't care if people call me lame, square, they're going to question my blackness. I mean, I don't care. I'm getting out.
Well, speaking about blackness, do you think there's a correlation between people from the African diaspora and people of color and poverty? You don't think there's like a relationship there?
It's true that, you know, I belong to a community that makes less than certain other communities. That's true. Significantly less. But you can't look at differences between groups and say it's only because of systems. Systems played a huge deal to it. I'm not discounting that at all. Like, it's a real big deal, and we're working to change that. But also, I mean, statistically, like people from my old neighborhood and people, you know, around this in the
Get him, David.
What's up, Einstein?
My network has gone kaput.
You tried to save a buck on it.
Not so smart.
Well, there is a
in these communities, they spend about 50% more on shoes than people who are not in those neighborhoods.
Oh, come on, dude. Come the fuck. Even I think she's going to be like, no. Oh, come on, dude. Straight up Candace Owens shit. Yeah. Black people are poor because they buy expensive shoes. Yeah. Look how he fucking hand waved away. Literally 2 centuries worth of intergenerational poverty. Yeah. Like slavery, rape, mass exploitation in the form of fucking poverty, systemic discrimination in the form of like Jim Crow laws and continued subjugation of black people, and the contemporary effects of that. He was like, yeah, you know, that was a thing, but like also black people do be buying shoes. That's fucking insane. You can't just literally on the one hand be like, well, all that stuff happened, but also black people like to buy expensive shoes. First of all, people should be able to buy whatever the fuck they want. But the idea that like systemic racism can be fucking hand waved away and then you turn around and hyper focus on the weird stereotype that like black people like fucking fancy shit and that somehow contributes to generational poverty that they're subjected to more than like the slavery stuff is yet another byproduct of, unfortunately, growing up in a white supremacist education system.
Well, not only that, Todd, but I think I looked up a recent statistic that said that Asian households, their children tend to study 13 to 15 hours a week, where in a black household, it's like 3 hours a week.
What the fuck? Okay, first of all, what? Dude, what is happening, dude? What the fuck is going on? Okay, first of all... Okay. First of all, comparing black people to an all-encompassing Asian stereotype of the model minority is incredibly damaging for multiple different reasons. First of all, there are, and this might come as a shock to you, when we talk about black people in America, for the most part, we're talking about African descendants of slaves. When we talk about Asian people, though, we are talking about people from incredibly different geopolitical situations that are coming in as either refugee status and are super fucking poor, or we're talking about incredibly wealthy people that are coming from very wealthy backgrounds that are able to immigrate here by purchasing land or by, you know, starting a business or anything like that. So that's like idiotic to compare black people in America to, you know, the entire Asian population in America. You look at like the Vietnamese population here, and the education level and the results of, you know, Vietnamese Americans is drastically different than, you know, Chinese Americans, for example.
My name is Hanifa. I'm an author, and I'm currently homeless, so I don't make any money right now. I grew up Muslim my entire life, and in Islam, it is permissible to marry your cousin. So my family enforced sexual acts in between cousins. It led to me having to flee my home.
This video is a collection, a consortium of all of the fucking worst, all of the worst fucking things I've seen so far. It just like every time I'm thinking that the video can't get worse, they straight up add a different layer on top of it to make it even worse than it was before. We're like wait a minute, what the fuck? And by the way, I think she's referencing Nation of Islam and not like Islam. It's my suspicion. It's gonna get worse. Are you serious?
$15 an hour is not enough for minimum wage.
It's gonna get worse.
Huh.
I did have a question for you two. You both mentioned that you suffer from addiction, and that as soon as you get a paycheck, it's gone, whether it's gambling or weed or shopping.
Todd's about to be like, that's why you shouldn't get paid, because that means you won't have enough money to fucking, you know, buy weed. He's like, this is why we didn't. I'm just kidding. He walked up for $15 minimum wage, so I guess he's like, all right. Technically, he is a landlord, though, so maybe he's like, you know, $15 minimum wage is good. That means I can raise my prices. Wait. Hold on. I don't see a couple business owners in that group. Old man and the Asian lady are surprisingly not there. If I recall, didn't she literally say, I pay my workers enough earlier? More than enough? I'm sure she's not up here because she thinks like it needs to be even more than $15. $15 is not enough for minimum wage. She probably misunderstood.
A lot of jobs will pay minimum wage, but they will expect the maximum effort. And I'm like, if you're gonna pay me minimum wage, I'm putting in the bare minimum effort.
I've always looked at it the opposite way. Like if I go into a company and they're paying me minimum wage, I do everything that I can to get promoted.
Yeah, bro, that's how it works. I swear.
But they don't promote you.
Dude.
That's the thing.
Like, ironically,
they just
here, you
push
wanna
on
know
more
something?
responsibilities. That's always how it's going to be. They're always going to just push more responsibilities on you, and so you may get a raise. I mean, there's been times where I was given 2 or 3 more things to do at work, but $1 extra raise, and it is what it is. But like, it's not a lot.
Dude got
They
lucky.
still
You wanna
expect
know
more
why?
from you.
Because what the other guy, what Starchild over here is talking about is literally smarter. He's right. If I'm getting paid minimum wage, I'm going to do the least amount of work fucking possible. You're saying I should get paid the federally least amount of money that you can pay me. So I'm literally going to give the least amount of effort. That is unironically smart. That's fucking smart. That other guy is an idiot. Oh, if I just do more work for fucking no money, maybe my bosses will appreciate me and decide to give me more money. It's like, no, minimum wage, minimum effort. He's right. So if there was truly a meritocracy, this motherfucker would be rich while this motherfucker would be poor because he is operating on his class interest.
Yep.
Your boss wants to pay you the least amount that he physically can while getting the most amount of work out of you. The worker, on the other hand, wants to work the least amount of hours for the most amount of pay possible.
It's the dialectics of a work environment.
On a class-conscious basis. He understands the position that he's in. He's right. This guy, on the other hand, if he was ever a worker, which I'm sure he was, he's literally operating against his class interest.
When you grow up the way I did with no money and your mom is struggling and crying herself to sleep every night because you can't pay the bills, that takes a toll on you as a kid and seeing that struggle. I got my first job when I was 12 years old, literally shoveling horse poop for $3 an hour.
Bro, homie's like, I did child labor and it was sick. I shoveled the most horse poop. I was literally a child laborer, okay? At the age of 12, I was doing child labor and it was fucking sick. So maybe you guys should also do child labor. It's fucking dope. What happened, bro? Did you eat some of the poop that this is what is like the outcome? Like, what kind of fucking brain problems do you have, dude? Holy shit. I mean, this is pure survivor bias. 100%. Yes, chatter, you are correct. My man literally is admitting that shit was fucked, but not recognizing how fucked shit was, actually. And I mean literally. I mean shit literally and figuratively in this situation.
For me, my mindset is working minimum wage is always temporary.
Oh, sick mindset, dude. What about for all the people that it's not? First of all, that's a fucking meme, okay? Like, we're not in 1965 anymore, Ginny, okay? Black people and white people in most places can drink from the same water fountain, and you don't have, like, a starter job as a minimum wage job. There are hella fucking people. I think 60% of the people that get paid minimum wage are actually full-blown adults that rely on that as their fucking main source of income. Holy shit. What the fuck? I hate this fucking meme. I hate this meta. It is totally fucking outdated. People still act like you can buy a house for like, you know, $1,000 or whatever the fuck. Oh my God.
Many, many, many years ago, you could go live off the land. You didn't have to work for somebody in order to survive. All the land is taken. It's in federal land. You can't go fishing.
No, it's
in
not.
federal streams. You can't
It's
do
all
that.
in
So
private
that's
land
not
right
possible
now.
at scale. In order to survive.
The United States government only owns like what, 30% of its land? Hold on. The federal government only owns 28% of the total land in America. Everything else is owned privately by people.
You must work for someone else. That forces wages down, right? People can't just go, F you, I'm not going to work, I'm going to chill and work on my novel or do whatever.
But like, why not? I mean, seriously. At least he's honest. At least the fucking mega wealthy poker guy who's best friends with Dan Bilzerian is honest, which is like, someone still has to clean the shit. Someone has to clean the toilets. And he's right about that. It's brutally honest, but he's right about that. And that is the main difference between like people who admit that capitalism is a
Oh my
brutal
God, they
system
cut this
and people
video
who refuse
too
to recognize
fucked.
that. Okay, the idea that someone has to keep the economy going and that someone is going to be you because you were born into a shittier zip code than others is the unfortunate reality under capitalism and the way that the two classes consistently fight against one another. 1/3 of minimum wage workers are over 30. 88% are older than 20 years old. The average age of the minimum wage worker is 35 years old. 88% are not teenagers. They're older than the 20 years of age. 36% are older than 40, and 56% are women. And 28% of minimum wage workers have children. 55% of minimum wage workers work full time. And on average, they earn half of their family's total income. This idea, this false notion that minimum wage is actually simply just, regular shit that you do when you're a fucking teenager, when you work at the soda pop factory. When dad comes home from the racism factory after a long day and beats mom, you come home from the soda pop machine where you're a soda jerk working for 3 cents an hour, minimum wage. Like, that's not how that shit works anymore, okay? Dad comes home from the racism factory, you're a soda jerk, you're, putting enough money behind to pay for college education that also costs $10 a semester. So you can Go in and get a job with a firm handshake.
We don't pay people based on what they need. And you were kind of pointing to this. I give the minimum effort if you pay me minimum wage. But there's certain jobs that are not worth $15 an hour. They're just frankly not worth it.
Why? Literally, why not? Right now, in this day and age, with inflation where it's at, there is not a single fucking job that you could do where you are not generating $15 fucking dollars or more, actually, more than $15 in the hour that you are working.
I want you to watch TV for an hour in your house and tell me how many commercials come up because I'm doing a survey. I want to pay you $7 an hour. You think I should have to pay you $15 an hour for that?
Wait, that's so fucking dumb. Here's the difference between me and that guy. I believe that if you're fucking counting ads and the amount of money that the surveying company makes as a consequence of that, or the amount of value that you're generating for the company is far greater than the fucking $7 an hour, then pay him more. That's how this works. Even then it doesn't fucking matter because what you're describing is like literally not a fucking full-time a job that you can live off of, but it should be if that is a job. You could usually, you just like made up a fucking situation. And ultimately, that ad counter still has to drive over to the fucking place of work. They still have to sit there for many hours. They're not making any money during that for doing other shit. They still have to fucking eat so they can count your ads. They still have to fucking put a roof over their table or put a roof over their house.
More money, like more social responsibility, right? Going back to,
What does that mean?
like, if you're a billionaire, then you have social responsibility to take care of people who might have less.
What the fuck? Oh man, poor billionaires, dude. They got such a bad fucking... Their situation is so bad. Yeah, that's why you always see billionaires fucking...
Hey, Strudy, why am I a
literally
leftist?
parting
I'm a
ways with their
leftist
money,
because I
you
believe
psycho.
in the
That's
liberation of the
bullshit.
working class.
Here's the evidence, okay?
We
Being
live in a
rich is
system
fucking
where
dope,
there's
especially
way
in
too much
America.
wealth
It's a
being
fucking
concentrated
playground.
in...
If
Hold
you're
on.
poor in America, you're fucked.
We live in a system where the wealth is being concentrated way too much to the ruling class. Hold on, I have a cat on my lap. And I believe that we need to do our best to make that more equal in our society than rather than concentrating to the point where there's a million billion trillionaires in this world rather than or while there's billions of people that are struggling. Yeah.
You're literally
That's why
living
I am a
in certain
leftist.
circumstances, you're living in developing nation conditions, okay? And sometimes even worse than that, because at least some developing nations will stretch out their fucking dollar and offer you some services. America does not. Guess what? I don't see any fucking billionaires being like, yeah, I want to live a life of fucking quiet solitude as like a middle class person. So I'm just gonna fucking straight up I'm gonna straight up fucking sell all of my stake and my ownership in all the companies that I own and then fucking give it away. That doesn't happen. You want to know why? Because being rich is fucking dope. It's freedom. Okay, you get freedom from that. It's the most freedom you can get. That's the reality. Fucking bullshit. And I say this as someone who had the fucking penny pinch. I say this as someone who had to fucking go get manager special chicken at Ralph's so I could still get a decent amount of protein, because a lot of those like expiration dates are bullshit regardless. I say this as someone who was like, oh, I can't go out because I don't fucking, I'm not gonna be able to drink, or I'm not gonna be able to fucking Uber. I don't know how much money I have left in the end of the month. Doing all of that weighs on you, okay? That's a fucking bag that you're wearing on top of everything else every single fucking day when you are not, when you're not well off. You never have to think about that. The first moment where I felt like, holy shit, I'm actually in like a really good financial situation was when I recognized like, I don't even have to ever have that fucking anxiety when I call an Uber. Never. Like that I don't have to look at how much the Uber is going to cost and whether or not I'm going to have enough money that I budgeted out in the end of the month. This isn't to say that like, I was like struggling. There were people that struggled way worse than me and still do to this day. But do not misunderstand my point. But ultimately, it's great. It's a wonderful thing. It's very expensive to be broke. And when you have money, especially up to a certain degree, especially up to a certain level, you get so much fucking freedom all of a sudden. That burden off of your shoulders that you live with every single day is taken off your shoulders. It's lifted. You no longer have that thing weighing on you all the goddamn time. Also, that's precisely the reason why you never see rich people be like, yeah, I fucking want to be broke. This is the worst Jubilee video I've ever fucking watched.
The fact that he got through that. Ugh. Alright. See what second thoughts, opinions on means testing
See
is.
your free credit scores on Credit Karma. Not the fake free. The real 100% free. Free to download, free to use.
I think we may have
This
went over
episode
this
is
before,
brought to
but
you by
I
me.
love
Just
watching
kidding. You all
second
made this
thought
one
videos. I could
possible, just like all the rest.
watch these all day.
If you like my videos and you're looking for longer form socialist content, check out The Deprogram, my podcast with Hakeem and Ugopnik. We recently did our first live stream on the Deprogram YouTube channel, and we're hoping to do one per month going forward. You can find all the links in the description. In late 2021, right before scrambling to make New Year's plans, ProPublica released a bombshell article. In big, bold font, ProPublica reports that American states hoarded over $5 billion in welfare funds in 2020,
Christ.
a number that has doubled in the last decade. $5 billion set aside specifically for poor American households, sitting in state coffers while the pandemic forced countless people out of work and into poverty across the country. In my home state of Texas alone, a place with over 4 million officially poor people and a government sitting on nearly $300 million earmarked exclusively for the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, or TANF for short, the percentage of applicants approved to receive these funds was 7%, about the acceptance rate of MIT. It gets worse. To qualify for TANF in Texas, a single caretaker with 2 children must have less than $1,000 in assets and bring in less than $188 per month. That is a ridiculously low amount of money to try to raise a family on. And the sad part is that numbers like these shine a light on only part of the inhumanity of American welfare programs. For people like Bonnie Bridgeforth, a single mother and TANF recipient featured in the ProPublica report, these statistics are just the tip of the iceberg. When you read past the bold letters and wade into the scary land of unbolded 14-point Times New Roman, Bonnie tells you about how Maine's requirements for TANF forced her into looking for a job to get access to TANF funds, despite being just weeks away from giving birth and raising 4 young children alone after her husband was imprisoned. Luckily, she got the money, but only once she secured a job, just weeks after giving birth, of course, and unluckily, not for long. When her husband was released from jail, despite being separated for nearly 2 years at that point and no longer living together or sharing finances, the state suddenly cut Bonnie's access to TANF, citing that her family no longer met, quote, deprivation standards. All the while, the state of Maine sat on over $100 million specifically set aside for people like Bonnie that it would not give out that year. This horrible approach to welfare is called means testing. Calling a program means tested is a euphemistic way to say that that welfare program is conditional. Basically, to get access to the funds or the welfare service, you have to prove
I will
that
be
you
right
need
back.
it. And you can easily see how, in theory, the idea doesn't sound so bad. Why should people who don't need something get access to it? Why should we give the wealthy access to services meant to help the poor? But those questions are misguided. We are absurdly far away from what the theory of means testing is, and there is absolutely no way to make means testing work. The reality of the world we live in is that this kind of rhetoric about keeping services out of the hands of the wealthy by means testing them is nothing more than a smokescreen politicians use to keep money out of the hands of the poor, those who actually do need the help. The only viable approach to making welfare meaningful and effective under embedded liberalism is through universal programs. Why is that? Well, why don't you just stick around and find out? Let's run through a couple technical problems with means testing. And then, maybe, if you're well behaved and say your pleases and thank yous, we'll talk about the more interesting political implications of a universal system of welfare. But before we do that, you need to hunker down and make some room in that big brain of yours to understand just how bad means testing is. Means testing is bad for a couple of reasons, but before you can even get to them, well-meaning people and swindling politicians dismiss the whole thing out of hand on account of the cost. The argument usually goes like this. If we have a limited government budget to fund certain programs, surely it's more expensive to give something to everybody than it would be to only give it to the people we're trying to target. Good news, it isn't. Numerous studies have been conducted on this topic, so I won't go too far into the details. But here's just one by the Center for Economic and Policy Research about using means testing for Social Security. Let's zoom in on the last line there. Okay, what does that say? Let's give that a look. Oh, wouldn't you know it, means testing is not an effective route for reducing the cost of Social Security. Wow, shocker. The problem with thinking that reducing the number of people who access a service would reduce its costs is that means testing doesn't just happen by magic. When you means test a program, you add costs. On top of the costs you'll need anyway to distribute the welfare program, you are creating a bureaucratic apparatus and hiring a bunch of people to decide who gets in and who gets left out when you means test. That costs money. Quite a lot of money. Often more than you're saving by limiting the number of recipients. Those bureaucratic costs aren't nothing, and the reason this study gets to its anti-means testing conclusion is because unless you cut out a lot of people from accessing welfare services, notably a chunk of people you're specifically trying to reach, means testing costs as much or sometimes even more than just providing the service universally. But okay, let's assume that isn't the reason you're a fan of means testing. Let's assume you're still bothered by the idea of wealthy people getting a free check in the mail or whatever. After all, why should old Jeffy B's get a cool extra K every month? The real answer is, who cares? If we're thinking in a traditional economic framework, we could just tax the wealthy by an amount greater than they receive in public services. That way, they're not getting anything extra from a welfare service. Or, if you're more partial to thinking in modern monetary theory terms, well, honestly, if you're an MMTer, you probably aren't worried about funding welfare services at all. But if you were, the destructive function of taxation could just be absorbed disproportionately by the wealthy. More about that topic, by the way, if you check out either of these two fantastic videos about what MMT is. In any case, whether it's funding in general or some fraction of the welfare money or service going to the wealthy, it's really not an issue. It's a very minor part of a welfare service, and can be worked around very easily. Politicians that absolutely love means testing, like everyone's favorite, Joe Manchin, really don't like this fact, and they will lie and manipulate to keep that hidden from you. Look, here's him talking about the Build Back Better Act and how he doesn't like that it doesn't have means testing for the child tax credit.
When they first brought the bill out, I said, Chuck Schumer, there's nothing in there about accountability, holding people accountable. There's no work requirement. There's no means testing to where you're targeting the people really need it. To give you an example, the child tax credit. Do you believe people making $200,000 and $400,000 would still get the child tax credit the same as someone making 50, 60, or 70 that really needs it? They didn't do that. So that price goes up.
He's wrong about all of that, by the way. Child tax credits under Build Back Better are means tested. He's just using that as an excuse to be an obstructionist. So, to recap, not only is he lying about the higher costs of universal programs in order to block and thin out the more ambitious parts of a BBB plan, but the plan he's obstructing is not great in the first place because it already has means-tested provisions in there. Honestly, the guy is terrible. That's why we here at Second Thought proudly certify Mr. Joe Manchin is a bad dude. Good luck getting re-elected to your 27th year in government now, Mr. Senator. Okay, so bad news. There are more problems with means testing. For starters, there exist all sorts of means tests. Some of them genuinely heartless, like requiring a negative drug test to get access to public services in at least 15 states, such as Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Kansas, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Utah, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Whew. Including for programs like food stamps, literally treating addicts as less than human and cutting off their access to food. No big deal. And in other places, public services are put behind work requirements. Also pretty bad, given how getting a job isn't fully up to you, it's highly influenced by personal or societal factors, and the constant pool of unemployed people kept as a labor reserve for a capitalist economy to tactically push wages down with the threat of termination. But that's not all. A large portion of welfare services, even supposedly, quote, universal programs, are put behind a poverty test, meaning you need to make less than a specific amount to get access to programs, which governments check using the official poverty measure, or OPM if you crushed all the letters together. Programs like Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, Head Start, and a lot of others use the OPM in one way or another as part of the way to determine eligibility. And the thing they don't tell you about the OPM is that it's a totally arbitrary number. The official poverty measure is not some objective fact handed down to us from the gods defining who's poor and who's not. Like many parts of the American welfare system, the OPM was built on a random number someone calculated for something else, and one day everybody started using it for everything and anything, including deciding who lives and who dies. If that sounds extreme, a study by the Columbia School of Public Health found that around 160,000 people died in the US due to a lack of social support, a low-end estimate considering the study adds a separate 130,000 deaths to quote individual level poverty. With all those lives on the line, you'd hope they calculated the number correctly, right? But they didn't. While we don't have time to get into the full history of the OPM and all of its many, many problems, the short version is this. Molly Orshansky, an economist working for the government in the 60s, developed the OPM using the absolute most restrictive meal plan from the Department of Agriculture designed only for, quote, temporary or emergency use when funds are low. Basically, a number calculated by the Department of Agriculture for how much money you need to not literally starve. Molly, brilliant economist that she is, multiplied it by 3 to account for all the other stuff people need to buy to live that's not food, and called that number the poverty line. Just 3. Because why not? If you're bored working for the Social Security Administration, just randomly multiply a number by 3 and hope it covers all of a family's cost of living. Some of the problems with this measure, other than the fact that it's as close to arbitrary as it gets, is that it assumes that households have a full-time housewife in the home to cook and carefully purchase all the food a household needs, and that poverty and prices for necessities are equal across the entire United States. Which, how did that work out? Orshansky herself considered this measure a, quote, conservative underestimate of the poverty in the US. But just a couple months after she created it, the federal government took this number under the Johnson administration's War on Poverty and slapped it on everything, leading us to where we are today, where the OPM or some multiple of it can decide your access to federal social services. That one number is the line between life and death for hundreds of thousands of Americans. So there's that. And there's more. I won't spend too long on them, but there are a couple other problems. Means testing creates, or at the very least exacerbates, the stigma of receiving social services, which sucks when you're trying to help people get out of poverty. If getting a service singles you out and brands you with the label poor, you're more likely to not take advantage of it because of the shame associated with it. Sadly, this is a well-documented phenomenon. On top of that, means testing creates really perverse incentives that can keep people trapped in poverty for longer. When multiple programs are tied to the OPM and you step even $1 over that line, you can suddenly start footing the bill for all sorts of services you didn't before. And while you're no longer officially poor on paper, you can suddenly start living in much worse poverty. And it doesn't end there. The complexity of means testing means that a lot of people who are specifically targeted by means-tested programs never get access to them. Between the complexity of filling out forms to prove you're as poor as you say you are, knowing those forms even exist, and the bureaucracy of making sure you're not lying, means testing keeps countless thousands out of the services the government has explicitly acknowledged they are entitled to. No matter what angle you take, means testing simply does not work. In contrast, universal programs like free college or free healthcare all fill the gaps of these massive problems with means testing with no downsides for the people who need these services the most. Universal programs are also just more popular. For one of the country's few sort of universal programs, Social Security, a Pew survey found that over 74% of Americans agree that no cuts should be made. A clear and strong approval for a universal approach to welfare. Compare that with the constant demands and efforts to cut funding to food, health, and housing aid for the poor, and universal programs are a standout in the American welfare state.
This is an opinion you can trust from Rhonda Schwab, the owner of a BBB-accredited kayak repair shop.
And here we find a big part of the reason most of our welfare isn't universal. Beyond a few technical issues with niche welfare programs, the main barrier to universal welfare is the kind of politics that a universal policy creates for the wealthy. Universal programs are good for class solidarity. The same way that Social Security gets broad popular support, other universal programs, more expansive in their reach and more relevant to people's everyday lives, can serve as a way to build collective interests among the lower and so-called middle class who benefit from redistribution. When these groups are united in their interests, defending a common program that serves their collective needs, they create a politics of mass solidarity that, in turn, creates a stronger counterpower to the owning class. By contrast, by discriminating in favor of the poor, the targeted model creates a zero-sum conflict of interest between the poor and the better-off workers and the middle classes who must pay for the benefits of the poor without receiving any benefits. Means testing programs targeting the poor create strong feelings of resentment among the comparatively better-off middle class. A feeling of resentment relayed in our media with tropes of laziness and selfish, quote, welfare queens themselves tangled up in racist imagery targeting black and other minority groups. These fractures in society pit the proletariat against itself, with constant worry from the middle class that they are being taken advantage of when the poor get quote-unquote undeserved benefits like a higher minimum wage, rather than worrying about the massive amounts of money and power higher on the economic ladder that has a much bigger impact on their lives. Means testing parcels out the working class into discrete interest groups, disunited and competing among themselves. Universal programs do the opposite, bringing as large a group as possible under the same umbrella, ready to defend their interest as a group because their collective interests are also their individual interests. With universal, transparent, and generous policies, we can bring people into politics on the grounds of solidarity, not factional competition. There's some evidence of this working on not really universal, but more inclusive programs like the World War II GI Bill, which brought black beneficiaries into the game of politics to defend their benefits and claim their status of full citizens with more vigor. Black GI Bill users immersed themselves in confrontational political activity, challenging politics as usual in order to gain the rights of equal citizenship. During the height of the Civil Rights era, 1950 to 1964, 35% of black users participated in such activities compared to 8% of black non-users. That is a big difference, and a very similar thing happened with low-income seniors and Social Security. Inclusion into welfare programs also means inclusion in confrontational politics to preserve that inclusion and extend it. And look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like expanding the welfare state within embedded liberal regimes is the end goal.
It's not.
Far from it. Plenty of ink has been spilled on social democracy and liberalism, systems under which labor is, by definition, subordinated to capital when it is working with the state. These are unstable systems under which any sort of welfare program can only function so long as profit rates are not too threatened. And the minute this is not the case, capital reclaims the full extent of its repressive power. I am well aware of that, and we shouldn't ignore it. But given the lack of class solidarity we have in this country, and how crucial that solidarity is for the success of a true democracy, universal programs, beyond bringing a direct and immediate improvement to people's lives, could represent a key avenue for a better politics. I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that we've got a new YouTube channel for the Deprogram, where we'll be doing one live stream per month in addition to our usual podcast episodes. The first one was a lot of fun, and we're really looking forward to seeing what questions you all come up with next time. If you like the kind of content we're putting out, remember to subscribe to the Deprogram YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of each new upload. And if you really want to support the podcast, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/thedeprogram. Patron perks include early access to new episodes, a bonus episode per month, and for the highest tier patrons, a private voice chat with Hakeem, Ugopnik, and me every month. Links to the YouTube channel and our Patreon are in the description. Thank you so much for your support. We really couldn't do it without you.
Hey, Tovarishi. As you may know, me, Hakeem, and JT from Second
I love
Thought
you, Gopnik.
started a podcast
I love
called
everybody on
The
the
a
Deprogram.
truly international weekly
You Gopnik,
semi-edgy
Hakeem,
politics,
Second
news,
Thought.
and philosophy
Great people.
show spanning pretty much the whole world, from the Balkans to Iraq and the United States. Find it on your preferred audio platforms through one of the links in the description. I'll never forget how confused I was for the first time when I met a boy, no, a man who was jealous of his own father. His dad had bought a new car, and he was left with an old one. His dad, his blood, the very man who gave him life, was no longer just a parent, seen through that prism, but a business associate, a bank, a financial partner, and even competitor. The family commodified. Engels, who doubled both as Marx's literary and philosophical partner, as well as the sugar daddy to beat all other sugar daddies, published a very important and relatively controversial to this day piece of literature not long after Marx had passed. Based on his own thoughts and research, those of Marx and of a Lewis Henry Morgan, a 19th century anthropologist and advocate for Native American rights, he published The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. In it, he discusses the development of human society and the family, while his views on the different stages of social growth, from what he calls primitive communism to today's capitalism, are incredibly interesting, though a bit debunked by the anthropological community. His views on capitalism's impact on the so-called bourgeois family is absolutely fascinating. People whose whole career is based in conspiratorial fear-mongering have been misquoting the Marxian stance on family since the good old Cold War, pitching the idea that somehow they want to derail everything and anything you hold dear, nationalizing children, throwing them in the town square to be raised by the commune, or telling parents how to look after their kids, and other such nonsense. All this couldn't be further from the truth. Engels's book, if anything, implies that the very modern ideals of familiar connection based on love, community, and care have been corrupted by one simple thing: the financial relationship and dependence these family members share. Now, what does that exactly mean? Well, let's take a deep dive. To simplify greatly, and I do mean greatly, according to Engels, there were 3 stages to the development of the family. The first stage was when we established a difference between generations and allowed only the formation of families between those in similar ones, a period where relationships between parents and children no longer occurred, a stage which differentiated us from animals. The second stage extended the taboo to relationships between siblings as well, but due to a lack of knowledge at the time, relationships between first cousins most likely still occurred. In the final stage, which occurred eons ago for the first time, the husband had one primary wife. Inbreeding was practically eradicated, and monogamy as a concept slowly arose into the mainstream. It is in this third stage, the monogamous relationship between two people, that we see the economic impact wealth and property begin having on our actions and values. For example, it's sound to believe that polygamy was still common amongst men, but no longer amongst women, since their fidelity was what ensured the child's legitimacy. Ownership was still passed down from generation to generation, but from sibling to sibling. It's only in the establishment of primitive feudal and later bourgeois societies that we saw the concept of inheritance, as we know it today, to having developed. Hoarding wealth, land, serfdoms, and power made little sense if there was nobody to give it to upon your passing. When the accumulation of capital, wealth you can use to make more wealth, and private property, land and buildings used to actively generate money, began to play a key role in everyone's hierarchical position in the world, it slowly but surely seeped its way into the family structure. Engels' argument is as follows. Two partners will always have the preservation of inheritance in mind, and as such will never be truly and in its entirety free to choose their partners. The only couple that can wholeheartedly believe their relationship is founded on true compatibility and that their love for one another and their children is unobstructed by anything except the relationships themselves are the proletariat. Because the working class owns little and can offer nothing except knowledge and wisdom to their partner and kids, their love is uncorrupted by the inherently prostitution-like nature of the capital-oriented family. To explain a bit more simply, so-called capitalist families which own larger businesses, rent extracting land, condos and apartments put out for rent, or who are very large stock owners and corporate board members, have linked themselves to massive money-making industries, and as such cannot be truly seen as separate individuals when looking to start a family. The relationship is no longer between two people, but one between two people and their capital. Mike, who owns a Fortune 500 company, can no longer just be Mike. He's Fortune 500 Mike, and his marriage and relations to his children will forever reflect that. The proletariat is not left unscathed by this either, as it's coerced into attempting to marry into the bourgeois class in order to better its ever-diminishing status in society. As instruments for financial independence grow ever rarer, with lower-paying jobs, higher unemployment, and a stagnant average wage, in the face of eternal inflation, the family becomes commodified, corrupted into being yet another instrument of wealth creation. But hey, that right there might seem like some kind of an emotional argument, saying that by turning ourselves into capitalists, we are transforming into something other than ourselves, and that therefore we'll never know if someone loves us for us or for our position in capitalist hierarchy. But what about people who don't care about those material things, you might ask? They certainly still exist, right? Well, yes and no. I mean, if we look at children inside of the capitalist framework, who literally represent the definition of a group that shouldn't care about your money, your literal offspring, we see that even their relationship to their parents has also, in extension, become a relationship with their parents' money. They turn from genetic offspring into potential future execs and current middle managers of their family's wealth. Engels and Marx see the family as a microcosm of the larger state. Within the family, he is the bourgeois, and the wife represents the proletariat. The husband who enjoys the fruit of this labor functions as the bourgeois because, though the wife is paid in room and board, the value he extracts from his wife far exceeds the cost of her upkeep. Some of you are probably familiar with the left's viewpoint towards this historical dichotomy in cis-straight relationships. It doesn't only apply to the housewife either. Modern capitalism, by not only introducing but forcing both partners into the workforce, has done two things. Doubled the amount of work required by the woman, who now has to toil away for a boss at work, and her husband at home, as well as almost completely annihilating the choice before any woman, or man for that matter, to dedicate their life to caring for the family due to most people's financial inability to do so. Basically, the economic model has only supplied both members of a monogamous relationship with more work and less time for their own family. Sure, it has rejected traditional patriarchal values to an extent in hopes of boosting the labor pool with female workers, but it's only introduced women to obedience at work instead of obedience at home. But all that's very well discussed, especially by far more brilliant feminist scholars than myself. I'll let them tell their stories. What's talked about far less in the left, but is extremely misconstrued by the right, is capitalism's influence on the relationships we have with our kids or parents, respectively. I find it very unfortunate that the conversation about family and so-called family values has been kidnapped by conservative demagogues who mostly use it to sell homophobic and heavily patriarchal values. In a way, it's almost beautifully ironic. The very system those same neocon idiots are trying to sell you on as being a natural extension of the family is the one putting the most stress on it. In the olden days, very large families often stuck together for life or until marriage. The need for able-bodied farmers to reap the land and supply food for themselves and their children kept everyone in the same household for quite a while. Grandparents got to actually see their grandkids, and adults could take care of their aging parents. The family unit was brought together due to the needs put on them by that system. As we've evolved into the modern capitalist framework, that has all but disappeared. It's not better or worse, it's just different. But what is undeniable is the economic model's impact on the family structure. Why is it so stressed that a kid should leave their parents' home at 18, either to receive gainful employment or pursue a university degree? Again, a few systematic reasons. The financial stress on the parents is to be alleviated as their careers have either peaked or are slowly descending in the local area's labor pool. The kids themselves are needed by that same labor pool as well, and are therefore encouraged to finally turn off the child in them and become not only an adult, but an adult worker. The religion of competition blows its whistle and pits millions of young adults against each other in the race to make their parents the proudest ones in the neighborhood. The longevity of family life is quite literally cut short, all based around a fictional age cap because the economy needs fresh blood. Any family which chooses to not pursue that model is ostracized, where both the parents are seen as meek and the kids as lazy. But that's just one small random example. How many kids we have, on average, goes down the wealthier a country, with a few exceptions. This is often attributed to availability of birth control methods, a higher level of average education, and more opportunities being available to citizens. All factors which do considerably impact if the average family has 1 or 2 kids versus, 7. But that's not all. Every child costs time and work, family labor, but also very real capital. And today, it costs more than it ever did in history. The opportunities our potential children can have are directly linked to how much we can invest in them. Education being the simplest of examples, tutors, private schools, and highly known and respected universities, or capital to start a firm, will skyrocket a child's chances of future economic success. Therefore, unless unfathomably wealthy, the family which wanted to grow shrinks massively in size due to the simple realization that we can sometimes only afford 1 child or 2. Not that we don't want more, but that the possibility for giving our all for a child financially diminishes with every next child born. Responsible parents are forced into thinking and calculating and analyzing their children as business ventures. The whole relationship adults and kids have with their parents is built around the collected wealth and capital the household possesses. It's either softened up thanks to the wealth sharing or heavily strained on because of the lack of it. Kids who aren't even workers or capitalists become an extension of whichever of the two their parents happen to be. Every high school has the rich kids, the middle, and a bunch of the downtrodden. Their first interaction with hierarchy of the adult world starts for them as an extension of the financial grouping their parents are in. And while for the modest child their love and respect for their parent will mostly depend on the genuine interpersonal relationships they have, for a family with any sort of wealth, the child is no longer just a member of the family, but a boss in training, working their parents towards the goal of one day inheriting all that wealth and responsibility. The financialization of everything has completely taken over the very definition we have of what it means to be a good parent or child. We're proud of our children if they depict ruthlessness and cunning we know is necessary for survival in today's world. We judge them based on their ability to keep carrying the capital we've accumulated past our own lives. In a weird, messed up way, we sometimes even grow jealous of our parents or our children. Your ability to take care of your old folks, if your relationship wasn't completely destroyed by the time they're pensioners, is completely based around your monetary capability to put them in a nice home, send them to nice vacations, or give them high-end medical coverage. Furthermore, how good of a parent you are almost completely revolves around your capabilities as a breadwinner, completely ignoring the equally, if not more important aspects of parenthood: time spent, love given, and wisdom passed on. Time spent with the family has also been crushed, On one side of the aisle, we're bombarded by work we take on gladly to bring about a better life for our families, but work that in the long run does not much more but alienate us from the very same family we're trying to take care of. Or, in contrast, it puts a burden, especially on childbearing people, that they're somehow forced to choose between a career and the joy of birth. On one hand, we are lazy if we spend time with our families, and are lazy if we don't. The market's constant privatization of child group care, be it schools or daycare, doesn't help with this in the slightest either. And what about careers? Yes, the thing you either spend half of your teenage years arguing with your parents about, or in contrast, agreed with them fully on. How many families completely lose out on the arguably most important reason they exist in the first place? Support. Because they're scared that the career choice their kid is making might not be in line with climbing the monetary ladder. How many parents dissuade and in a way manipulate their very offspring into pursuing something they absolutely hate because it might bring stability? How many push their very own child into the same career path they chose or into the same business they built because someone has to continue the work? The child is the boss in training, nothing more, nothing less. And honestly, who can blame a parent for thinking they're doing what's best for their children? I repeat this all the time and I'll do it again. Societal problems are systematic and not individual. We are consequences of our environment. So Judy the painter, don't blame your book-smart mama for wanting you to be a dentist, and Jeremy the dentist, don't blame your hippie daddy for pushing you to paint. Their parenting is an extension of their life experience. That's arguably never going to go away. Where the problem lies with the capitalist family experience, though, is that it's not just our parents trying to make kids like them. It's that parents who knowingly gave up on their dreams in pursuit of financial stability and economic growth are so corrupted by the very system that they think passing the torch of petty wage slavery to their own kids is the right thing to do. Stripped of hope for purpose, drenched in alienation, the modern parent is stimulated on all sides not to save their own kid from the very prison they enshackled themselves in, but quite in contrast, to tell them there's no prison at all. When Marx and Engels talk about abolishing the family, they're simply noting that the process has already begun, quite a while ago in capitalism. Every non-financialized structure, be it family, relationships, hobbies, passions, are systematically commodified to stimulate a transactional relationship. While there is no standardized definition of a family we can follow without alienating at least one section of society, it would be immaterial to not note that this ever so important concept, at least to me, and I hope to many others, changes and adapts to every mode of social organization it exists in. It's molded by the social and economic conditions that the family is forced to live under. Depending on the class relations in a given era or a given place, the family is repackaged in order to best serve the system. As capitalism itself gets closer to the brink of collapse, with every re-emerging crisis, the question we must ask ourselves is what sort of families we want to build in the future. Do we embrace the market and simply run our households as businesses, concentrated on wealth hoarding while competing against other families? Do we backpedal into older traditionalist models of what constitutes a family, hoping that we will somehow make ourselves feel something again? Or maybe, and hear me out here, we allow ourselves to build families most suitable for us and our loved ones on the basis of respect, comradeship, and love for love's sake, where romantic relationships aren't underpinned by one's dominion of the other, where parental pride isn't only born out of seeing greed grow in your child's eyes, where families are liberated from comparison and competition, and they're given the chance to grow into their own unique definitions of what a family even is. Thank you for watching. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers, which is absolutely insane. I haven't even released 30 videos. Click that subscribe button and let's hit that completely arbitrary, meaningless number soon so I can tap myself on the back. Furthermore, if you like my videos, do consider supporting me on Patreon. For the price of less than a can of beer a month, you'd be helping me support myself as well as keeping my videos 100% sponsor free and therefore truly independent. Plus, it's not like any of these videos get advertiser approval anyway. Thank you in advance for even considering it. Now, I would like to take the
I love how it says marks in minutes. I think there's a 22-minute video.
The labor theory of value.
22 and a half
the
minutes.
Infamous
Let's
theory
go.
devised by the leader of the Frankfurt School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Karl Soviet Marx. It rejected the basic economics of supply and demand and aimed to abolish money in favor of running the economy solely on stolen privately owned toothbrushes. Or something like that, at least. The labor theory of value, better referred to as the law of value, is the cornerstone of Marx's thought, yet is so commonly not understood even by a lot of leftists. And I mean, can you really blame them? Have you seen the size of capital? I mean, fuck reading that. The new season of Black Mirror aired. Oh no.
What if your Ethernet cable was a star? What if Dad was a looked at a cell phone the less you lived?
Seriously though, the law of value is complicated. Like, really complicated. So much so that I'm not even going to call this a basic introduction to the law of value. It's more a basic introduction to the basics of an introduction to the law of value. As such, it seemed appropriate to try and make a video to explain these concepts to complete beginners. Hopefully, this can be your first step in understanding what Marxism is really about. Not the noble plight of the worker, not the glorious revolution, but cold, hard economics. Fun, right? Well, we'll give it a chance. Really quickly before we jump into things, the animations for this video were done by a super cool YouTuber, An Actual Joke. She makes phenomenal content, so please go check her out. But anyway, let's go. What even is the law of value? In essence, the law of value is a theory developed to explain the origins of value and its behavior in capitalist society. As capitalism itself is just a social relation, it follows that the law of value is primarily an analysis of social relations. Market value is only a social construct. If you take an object into the wilderness, does it still have a market price, an exchangeable value? How could it? There's no one to sell it to. The law of value does not posit some idealized society to be realized through conventional political action, like say, classical liberalism or anarcho-capitalism. All Marx did, and Engels too for that matter, will look at what had happened in history empirically, look at the society they lived under empirically, and then explained why it worked the way it did, predicting what it will lead to in the future. There's no moral concern involved here, and as such, when Engels looks at slave society, for example, from 3,000 years ago, he never talks about them as a moral evil of any kind, and in fact condemns those who do. He, as well as Marx, is only concerned with what brought them into being and how it led society to serfdom. With capitalism, the point is not that it is evil and must be opposed. It's that it's volatile and will collapse.
It's Hegelian dialectics.
So, the law of value is, in essence, an explanation for the workings of the capitalist mode of production based on empirical data examined through a philosophical lens. There are, however, many aspects to it that all tie into one another in complicated ways. We will not be covering all of them, and the ones that we will cover are hardly going to be done any justice. As such, if you're serious about understanding the law of value, and by extension Marx, it is imperative that you read him. It's worth noting too that the justifications for the law of value go even beyond the simplified concepts we're covering here. Though Marx's law of value itself isn't a metaphysical theory, it draws heavily on metaphysics from before him. So if you really want to understand Marx, you should read Hegel, and as Hegel is only a continuation of Kant, you'll need to read him as well. And for Kant, you should probably read Hume too, and fuck.
Fuck it, why don't you just start with the Greeks before you read Marx?
It's best that before we get further into things, we define two commonly used terms in the theory: commodities and capital.
Alright, hold on.
A commodity is simply...
I'm getting a drink first.
a good that is produced specifically to be exchanged for a profit. Capitalism as a mode of production is this kind of production, commodity production, generalized and perpetuated to the whole of society. Money is a universal commodity that is used as a medium for representing exchange values of all different commodities, going by the classic understanding of Marx. This definition today might be altered somewhat to accommodate the fact that we're no longer on a gold standard, but as already stated, we're trying to keep things simple here. Capital, under the law of value, is money and resources used to make more money, or more exchange values. The money invested into buying more raw materials, the means of production themselves, the wages, these are all used as capital in commodity production, as they all serve the purpose of creating value. Under capitalism, the pursuit of capital accumulation is an end in itself. Like value though, capital isn't really anything tangible, it's a social construct. Tools used to make products are always tools regardless of where they are, but it is only under specific social conditions, the relations of commodity production, that these tools take on the role of capital. There are three types of value in Marx's theory: use value, exchange value, and market value. These are all distinctly different but all related. The last two are most important as they are actual quantitative values, while use value is slightly more abstract. For Marx, something has use value if it's useful to society in some way, and that's it. He isn't concerned with what society considers to be useful or why they do, just that they do. Every commodity produced under capitalism has, to some degree or another, a use value, because otherwise it wouldn't be produced. However, this use value does not determine the price of the commodity produced. The commodity also has an exchange value, defined as the ratio with which this one commodity exchanges with all other commodities. For instance, 10 cars to 1 house, 3 books to 5 grains of rice. Market value then, otherwise known as price, is this ratio expressed in the form of money, after fluctuations in supply and demand are factored in, which we'll delve into later. It's obviously a lot easier to just know the price of something, rather than the ratios for every commodity that you're interested in. So it's the exchange value that gets translated into a market price, rather than any kind of use value. This is important, as it's one of Marx's main contradictions of capitalism, which we'll elaborate on later. What determines exchange value then? The labor time that goes into producing the commodity. This point is often one that receives the most scrutiny from Marx's critics, so perhaps it's worth setting aside some time to justify labor being the source of exchange values in society. There are two lines of reasoning Marx uses here. Firstly, take any two commodities, say gold and wheat. Their exchange values are expressible in ratios of each other. So maybe 3 bales of wheat to 5 bars of gold. And this is really expensive wheat, but bear with me. What we're then asserting from this, perhaps without even realizing it, is that these two quantities, in order to be equal to one another, must then be equal to some third thing independent of both. And this sounds weird, but in a mathematical context, it makes sense. Take two equations, 5 plus 5 equals 20 over 2. These two equations are equal, but only because we know that they both individually are equal to 10. How about a geometric example? The area enclosed by a rectangle can be expressed in a certain number of right-angle triangles. But this is meaningless without first knowing how you attain the area of a right-angle triangle, half the width times the height. So, returning to the commodities, it then logically follows that the value of each individual commodity, if they can be expressed as ratios of one another, must therefore be equal to some third value. Why this third value is labor time, Marx explains as clearly as possible. As the exchangeable values of commodities are only social functions of those things, and have nothing at all to do with the natural qualities, we must first ask, what is the common social substance of all commodities? It is labor. That's not to say all labor, however. Not all labor produces exchange value. Only labor that produces use value, otherwise known as social labor. The exchange value of a commodity for this society is determined by the average time it takes society to produce the commodity. As such, if you personally take 15 minutes to produce a commodity, but that society can produce it in 10 minutes on average, the commodity you've produced does not count as having any additional value and still sells in the market based on the exchange value attained by the average labor time. This average labor time to produce a commodity is referred to as the socially necessary labor time, and it's usually the task of private producers to try and produce under this socially necessary labor time to properly compete in the market. The higher time it takes society on average to produce something, the more valuable it becomes, as it's harder to obtain in a given quantity. If, however, technological advancement halves the time taken to produce a commodity, its exchange value likewise drops, as it's much easier to obtain the same amount of commodities than before. Supply and demand are often considered the be-all end-all by a lot of people in regards to how price works. But imagine for a moment an economy where it is literally just supply and demand that gives us the prices of commodities. Well, as you would expect, when there's a higher demand than there is supply, competition among buyers is higher than it is among sellers, and prices rise. Likewise, in the opposite case, when supply is greater than demand, competition among sellers causes the prices of commodities to fall. But now the question is raised, what is a rise and what is a fall in price? What even is a high or a low price? A grain of sand is big when examined through a microscope, and a tower is small when compared to a mountain. Imagine a business. This business produces commodities and sells them on a market one day for a profit of £110 per item. The next day, they return a profit of £130, and the next after that, a profit of £200. With this information alone, how can we say what a large or small profit is? Well, suppose now that we know that each commodity costs £100 to produce. The first profit is now modest, the second large, and the last astronomical. Thus, it becomes clear that it's the cost of production that provides the set point by which relative magnitudes of profit can be based. As this cost of production is a fixed value, it serves as the solution to our problem of relativity in supply and demand by acting as the point of equilibrium, the point by which supply and demand fluctuate around. This equilibrium point is the exchange value of the commodity. So the market price is the exchange value represented in money, with also any fluctuations from the equilibrium point included. However, this distortion from the exchange value does not only come from supply and demand, but also from things like marketing, branding, culture, etc., all of which too provide meaningless alterations on price without any kind of set point. It is in between the cost of production and the market value that all of these distortions take place. Without any of them, products would be sold at the cost of production. The question then follows, assuming an equilibrium in supply and demand, What is the origin of profit if commodities sell at the cost required to produce them? Well, that's explained by wage labor. A fundamental aspect of capitalism is that there is a class which must sell its labor power on the market in order to sustain themselves, as they have no means of production themselves.
Hey,
Under
how's it going, buddy?
pre-capitalist economic
How you
formations,
doing?
even though there were still
I've been working on a
classes,
lot of Winter Todd.
most people would own their own means of production, with which they could then directly produce for themselves their means of subsistence. The means of production under capitalism, however, are owned by a minority in society, the capitalists. This new arrangement, historically specific to capitalism, was established through what's referred to as primitive accumulation, essentially the forceful appropriation of tools and land from the peasants to the ruling classes of the time, which have then over centuries been exchanged around
141
between
kills so
different
far. I think I
capitalists.
need
As the
640
working class now have
for
no means of
99.
production for themselves, in order to sustain themselves, they must become employed by someone who does own means of production and receive a wage in exchange for their labor. However, labor itself is not something tangible and cannot be sold. So
You got
instead,
super lucky today? What'd you
workers
get?
sell their ability to labor, referred to as their labor power. Here, labor power is treated as a commodity, a good to be sold. Like any commodity then, it has a cost of production, and this is just the cost of subsistence for the worker providing the labor power. However, labor power is a very unique commodity, as it's directly involved with human interest, and therefore is subject to attempts to
You know,
raise the
Phoenix
value
that you
through
killed for the
acts of
pet in
class
the daily.
struggle,
Yeah.
like for example, strikes. At its most basic, wages cover food, rent, and transport. However, in first world countries where there has been many decades of class struggle, this baseline cost of subsistence has been risen to include more and more luxuries, which is why capitalists have then been forced to start purchasing labor power in
Which
third
one
world
was that?
countries
That was the,
where this dynamic of class struggle for higher wages has not yet been played out. As we've established,
That's
workers
right, it
sell
was
their
an
labor
empire
power, and they
need,
do so in
right?
measurements of time. For instance, they may exchange 12 hours of labor power for a wage that covers
Whoa.
their subsistence.
First time
The
you got a
capitalist then
pet?
has this
Damn, that's
full
awesome.
12 hours to
Congrats,
extract
man.
as much value
Cool.
from the workers' labor power as possible. From the point of view of the capitalist, they invest the capital of raw materials, wages, and tools, i.e., all the money that will go towards creating more money.
That's nice though. Definitely
In
one
order
pet
to
down.
make a profit at all, though, they
Couple
must
dozen
first
more to
recover
go.
all the invested value in production, and then all value created by labor after this point of breaking even is considered a surplus. As such, enough commodities may have been produced to cover the cost of investment at only 8 hours of laboring. However, the worker has sold their labor power for 12 hours, making these last 4 hours dedicated to creating surplus value, which is then retained by the capitalist. As such, the worker produces more than what they are paid in wages and are exploited. So, to summarize, the origin of profits are the surplus labor extracted by workers after they have paid off their own wages. If you've managed to keep up to this point into the video, then congratulations. However, you may be wondering, what can you actually
that's so
do
cool.
with any of this? How does it relate
happy
to the
for
real
you.
world?
It's
Well, it's from the law of value that
a pretty
Marx
nice,
was able to make
accomplishment
predictions
getting a
about
pet.
the development of the capitalist economy,
Especially
as a
with the
whole.
rates.
While we can't explain each one in detail here, we can briefly outline the ones that are key
Can I do
and how we
this?
might see them in the world we live in. Marx bases almost all of his predictions around the commodity having an internal conflict between its intrinsic exchange value and its use value. In simple terms, this refers to the fact that what might be profitable
Explain this
for
boss to you?
producers
Yeah,
is
sure.
not always useful.
Alright, so this is the Winter Todd. It is a huge beast that basically lives down in that hole. And it's I guess it's an ice monster. And basically these pyromancers have to keep flames lit and like basically using the flames to hurt the Winter Todd and keep him from coming out of its hole, I guess. So basically what you do is you cut the roots from the bruma roots from the trees that are around, and then you basically keep this fire going, and this winter tod is just gonna constantly hit you. Well, not constantly hit you. Every now and then it's gonna hit you. Once it gets down to like 20%, it stops attacking you for as much as it does. But the winter tod can break these, basically stop them from being lit. They can also, what you're about to see is it's gonna break that. And you can use construction to fix that. You use fire making to light it, and wood cutting to chop these. And basically, you just get a reward crate. You have to basically have 500 points. So basically, if you chop the tree and you throw a log on here, it's 10 points. If you chop the tree and then you fletch it, is it solo? No, it's not solo. I just have a entity hider on right now. Hold on. Yeah, there's a bunch of people here. I just keep it hidden because Winter Todd chat is really toxic, so keeping that hidden is self-care right there, you know. I hope this is enough for me to go through the next one. So basically all I do is I try to get 500 points. You can actually solo this. The main purpose is for actually both. So it's like it scales to your levels. I'm not getting a lot of woodcutting experience, but as far as like fire making, fletching, and construction, they all like basically scale to your level. I believe it's if I do 640 of these from 50 fire making to 99, yeah, I get 99 fire making from it. I also have a chance for the Phoenix pet, which is this guy. The Pyromancer gear, which is what you see me wearing right now, most of it at least. And I can get a dragon hatchet from here. There's a chance I could get the dragon hatchet, so instead of me having to fight oh god, I don't even know how I get a dragon hatchet in this game at this point. It's a really annoying creature. I know that. Dragon hatchet. The Dagonoths, I guess. Are Dagonoths in? Yeah, I guess Dagonoths are in the game. So yeah, that's like the only way? Is that the only way we can get dragon hatchets other than this minigame? At least for irons. Oh god. Yo, I was not prepared, actually. This is not gonna go well. Yeah, this is actually this is ridiculous. I've never had to eat so much. Oh my god. Yeah, okay. Never mind. I need to actually go and heal. I wonder if I can go into oh, get out of there. Ah. Okay, I'm going to try my best to no food the rest of this. So right here, I believe you can't get hurt. Your hands are too cold. Move closer to the brazier. Oh, Jesus. Okay. So I actually have to be in here in order for me to... Oh, man, this is going to be really annoying. Okay, how much? Okay. Yep, and if you can repair the brazier, yeah. So if the Wintertide gets hit, or if the braziers get hit, you're going to want to repair it. Also, the pyromancers will possibly die. As you can see, that guy just got I think he has one more hit until he's dead. But yeah, so if he dies, you have to get a rejuvenation potion, which there's a Bruma thing on the side. You basically pick the herbs, and then there's a potion that you basically just make for Herblore, and then you give that person, the pyromancer, the herb and or the potion, and it should be good. And I'm just stacking these at this point. I need all these. And what else do I have? Do I not have, like, I guess that's all I have. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, let me put this back on too. Boom.
For consumers. The most
But yeah,
obvious examples
basically,
of this
I wanted
might
to
be
do this.
something like
Oh
the
no!
housing crisis,
As much as I'd love to,
having more empty
but,
homes than we have homeless people, or perhaps world hunger.
I wanted to
with
get
a
this
large
done before
overabundance of food produced.
my HP was too
More
high,
minor examples of
because
this,
it's
however,
the
crop
damage
up
also
in
scales
things
to your
like planned
level.
obsolescence.
So I could
Building
basically do
products with
this
the intent for them
like
to
5 or
eventually
6
wear
times
down or
around
break in order
while
to
I'm level
force
10. But like,
consumers to
if I was level
continually
99
repurchase the same
health,
product.
I'd be getting
It
hit
should
by,
be
for like
obvious
12s.
that the consumer gains no benefit from this, but it's something commonly carried out by the most successful companies in order to maximize profit. This concept, however, touches on not one, but two predicted problems. Not only does the planned obsolescence increase profits, but they also keep perpetual consumption in motion. It's obvious that in order for a capitalist economy to function, people must purchase products on the market. Not just once, but continually over
When I
long
put
periods
leftists
of
in my
time.
title, usually I do that
This is
because
why
like
car manufacturers
I
reserve their
figured
ideas for new features
as
in a
I'm
car
reacting
one
to
year
political
sell them to you the next year in a new model.
stuff,
Or why
I would like
iPhones
to
are
at
built
least
break just in time
state
for the
where
next
I
one to come
kind of
out.
am on the political
problem with this
spectrum,
logic in production,
so that
however,
if I
is
mean
that it is fundamentally
if that's not your
unsustainable.
thing, then that's
Even
fine.
if we ignore external factors,
I just
like
don't
natural
want somebody to be like, oh
resources, and
cool,
focus
they're
solely on
watching
the
something and they
internal
come in and be like, oh
workings of
fuck
the
this,
social
you know?
system of capitalism.
Like obviously.
One of the
coming in
predictions
to
proposed by the law
check
of
it out.
value is a
But
tendency
yeah,
for rates of profits
I grew
to
up in
fall
a southern
over time,
Kingston.
which has
How
been
right my
empirically proven
surrounding
to be happening
slash
in our
family
modern
is.
society.
Oh,
The
you grew up in the
result is
South,
a need
yeah.
for producers
Oof.
to sell a
Yeah,
higher
it's.
quantity of product in order to attain
I mean, it's
the same
honestly a
amount
little
of
bit of
profit.
both.
But of course, there's only
I actually
so
had somebody
much
come
that
in and
people
ask
need
me
to
why
buy.
I
It's
was a
difficult to
leftist,
sell
and I mean,
someone more than they need. And though this
I
is more or less why
I grew up
advertising
working multiple
exists,
jobs
it can
trying
only
to
offset the
survive
problem.
in a
There is
state
further
that
exacerbation here when coupled
was
with a
well
continual increase of technology in
over
production.
like highly dense.
Technology in
Like,
production
hold on.
under capitalism
Let me do this.
serves to increase the efficiency.
I lived in New Jersey for a long time in my life. It's the highest populated state, and on top of that, you have constant competition where like, I mean, everybody's fighting for the jobs there. Everybody's fighting for resources and everything. But like, honestly, they have they're a relatively liberal state. They have social safety nets that are I mean, they're there, but they have state taxes, which is really surprising because I moved to Washington State, and we have no income tax, no state income tax, yet somehow we have health care, we have stronger safety nets. I see not a lot of people, but a decent amount of people are on EBT here. As a cashier, I can actually like kind of attest to that. But yeah, honestly, like I feel like our society or our system right now is kind of just failing us, and hoping that like maybe adding some type of leftist politics into our government would be kind of useful. Even though, I mean, recently they just passed HR 9, which is denouncing the horrors of socialism, which is a really, really, really weird thing. It's like, I mean, we pay them to make laws about our society, and yet they are saying, let's make laws about like other other countries and saying, hey, this is bad, you know. Yeah, I moved to Washington State. I went from New Jersey all the way to I dropped my old roommate off in Texas. He lived literally lives like right next to the border. I literally drove from New Jersey all the way down to the border, all the way up to Washington. It took me 7 days. It was a fun drive. But yeah, I actually have a couple my grandparents are completely to the right. Their whole entire area in New Jersey, like Ocean County, is kind of like a Republican based area. They have a lot of I know they have a lot of Trump signs up around their area. You got married around a year and a half ago, and you took a honeymoon in Oregon and Washington, and you loved it. Yes, it's such a nice area over here, honestly. That's awesome. Where out in Oregon / Washington you guys end up going? I haven't done much around here because honestly, like, so in New Jersey, I ended up with a DWI and I lost my car. Basically the whole idea was I'm gonna have a fresh start in a new state, and I wanted to homestead, and honestly the fact that there was legal cannabis in the state was a factor, and yeah, I ended up just like straight moving out here in a U-Haul. I didn't even have a car for 2 years. I just got my car last June. But yeah, everywhere that I've been around here is so beautiful, honestly. Like, I'm surprised. I shouldn't have stayed in New Jersey as long as I had.
Of the worker and allow them to produce more of a commodity in the same amount of time, or allow the capitalist to employ fewer workers to produce the same amount. Sometimes it can go further than this and replace the worker altogether. As such, we have an increase in the amount of which we can produce.
Around the coastal side?
Alongside this,
Oh,
a
wow.
decrease in the amount of workers being paid wages.
I have yet to go to
with
the
which
coast,
they can
the
use
West
to
Coast.
purchase these goods on the market.
I
As
live on
already
the
established,
east
we're on
side
a
of
trend
Washington.
towards producing more than what people can buy.
I
But
think it's
now,
3
as
hours away
technology
from the
increasingly
coast.
advances, the problem becomes worse on both fronts. What's more though, is that as we approach the capabilities to completely automate production, we're faced with the problem of no longer needing the manual labor
Oh,
of
that's gonna hit me with
millions of
something.
workers.
Yeah, ouch.
The ability to end the need to work to sustain ourselves becomes a crisis, rather than an
You're a big
achievement
hiker,
that
so
mankind has
yeah.
previously striven for
100%.
throughout history. Of course, the ultimate idea is that eventually, these problems and many more not covered here will lead to the collapse of the
Yeah, I
capitalist
honestly love
mode
the
of
nature around
production
here.
due to internal crises.
Granted, I literally live in a
However,
plains section.
Marxism must not be thought as some kind of idea to construct a new society that merely remedies
a lot less
these
crowded.
problems, thus making it morally superior in some way. Marxism is, first and foremost, an analysis of capitalism and the laws under which value as a social relation operates. The idea that capitalism will collapse, as Marx put it, under the weight
Have a
of
good
its own
day. Thanks for
contradictions, is just
showing
a
up.
logical conclusion drawn
I'll
on
probably
from
still be
initial
here.
analyses.
There's a good chance I'll still be here.
Any idea
doing
about
the same
concept
thing.
of
I have like
socialism
500
stem
more
from simply being what
matches. I want to get
capitalism is
99
not,
fire making before I
and
do
not
anything.
from the notion that they might be better in some way. As such, it follows that any attempts at constructing a socialist society hold no bearing
God.
over Marx's analysis of capitalism, because what was analyzed remains unchanged and still follows all the same rules that led to any attempts being formed in the first place. That's not to say that the law of value is historically deterministic though, claiming that, as the saying goes, communism is inevitable. Rather, we as a society are left with the choice of progressing on to socialism or being dragged into barbarism. All Marx says is that capitalism will collapse, not what it will lead to. I hope this video was informative and helped you guys learn the basics of the labor theory of value. I get that it's hard as well, so if you have any questions about anything, just leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to get to you. As well as that, if you want to go on to learn more about this stuff, I'll leave loads of resources in the description below. particularly another YouTube video, a series actually, Capitalism 101, which talks about the same things we've gone over here. However, it's about 20 videos long, each about 10 to 15 minutes each, and it explains all of this stuff in a lot more detail and depth. And
somebody's just like, I just need the pet.
When you already have the basics, it explains it in a much more, in a much nicer way, I think. So make sure to go check that out. But beyond YouTube as well, Marx's Wage, Labor and Capital, and also Marx's Value, Price and Profits, both about 50 pages long pamphlets. They're very, very good, so go read them. And once again, please go check out An Actual Jokes YouTube channel. Like, massive thanks to her for doing the animations for this. I really appreciate it. And again, she makes brilliant content, so go do subscribe to her. Leave her nice comments and things like that, and maybe check out her Patreon as well. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave any questions in the comments, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and see you all next time.
See what we can find next. Scammer steal. Those have been getting really bad on Twitch. The fake OSRS and RS3 players, Twitch channels, the fake ones that are like, I'm quitting, and then it goes to another site. Basically, you could use Python to determine how that's being passed, and what I did once was create a script that basically goes to that site and then passes fake information to it using I think it was just requests. Let's see. Yo, it's like crazy how many times I get hit, literally like in seconds. Bruh. Let's see, where should we go? Bro. That was so funny. I remember saying that when Caitlin Bennett went out and started talking to actual like leftists. Um. Jesus. So we should Jesus. Should we watch some Jubilee? Hey, buddy, how are you doing? Let's see. What should we get into? Where to begin? Actually, yeah, that would be a good idea. Watching that.
Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is November 25,
almost 53 minute video.
If you're in the U.S., it's the day before Thanksgiving, and if you're not, I guess it isn't. Today's audiobook is Where to Begin by Lenin. This
Had a friend help the whole day with
one. I've been
day
teasing
here with his
what
website.
is to be done for a while on the channel.
I've
I've
helped
just
a
been
friend
busy
the whole
with
day
other
with.
things in my life. And
That's cool.
It's a really
What type of
long
website?
PDF, like 130 pages. So it's just been taking a while. In the meantime, I'm uploading this. This is kind of a forerunner predecessor to 1905's What Is to Be Done. Again, May 1901. So this is a short one. It has a lot of notes. I'm going to be reading the notes in this one because the text itself, I mean, it's short and the notes are almost as long as the text.
His
Also,
portfolio, okay.
For just people
okay.
trying to understand what happened in Russia in the early 1900s, first 2 decades leading up to the revolution and civil war, you know, people have been talking a lot about the massive unrest in the United States right now. Right now, the United States has a third of recorded active cases in the entire world. And no, the U.S. doesn't have a third of the world's population, not by far. So there is a massive society-wide problem. Almost everyone in the society recognizes the problem. All we really need is organization. And breaking free of the Democratic Party, breaking free of sort of the illusion of electoralism. I've promoted voting on this channel, but kind of just as a protest vote. I don't seriously think anyone's going to vote in socialism. And, you know, I mean, I've seen people debating whether it even makes
cases
sense
of what?
for ML parties or socialist parties to run candidates because it just kind of validates the illusion and can be confusing to people. I can see that point of view too. Who knows? I may adopt that point of view at some point because honestly, the shit I see coming out of Twitter and stuff, it's like people are still so invested in that system. It's crazy. But for understanding where to begin and the situation in Russia in 1900, 1901, you know, that revolution didn't come out of a vacuum. There was a buildup. There is a buildup
is
to
his
something happening in
portfolio
the United States
website
right now.
open?
It's crazy,
Up
crazy,
right now?
crazy breakdown. And for anyone not in the United States who doesn't know, basically the U.S. government wrote working families like I think a $1,200 check per person, and I think if you had a child, it was like $500 extra per child. And that was
by the way, this was all recorded around the time of beginning of COVID, so that's probably what he was referring to.
That was months ago. People were more eligible for unemployment insurance, even people who weren't normally eligible for unemployment benefits as a result of some pandemic relief. But for most people, they've been only paying like $175 or $200 a week through those benefits. There were enhanced benefits over the summer, but they ran out July 31st. And since August, people have just been expected to live off that $175, $200
Oh, not yet.
or
It's
go
quite
to
new.
work.
Fair enough.
It's a really, really crazy situation. I, for one, you know, I've been working on different projects this year. It is, including Socialism for All, obviously. It is hard for me to just stay motivated and to sit in my studio and not just be like pacing madly, or it's just, it's really, really disconcerting what's going on. We're now in the winter, or coming into the winter, it's still the fall, but crazy, crazy economic instability. And the government just went on holiday again. They went on vacation. They're just giving everyone a giant middle finger. You know, it's Thanksgiving. There's food bank lines everywhere. If you're listening to this and you're struggling, my heart goes out to you. I don't know what to say except look for like a mutual aid network in your area. You might be able to be connected with some resources. It's insanity. So anyway, on that note, getting back to Lenin's Where to Begin, before we get into that, linked off of the text, this is kind of a short one, and I'll be reading the footnotes in this because the footnotes are about as long as the text. Also, there's a reference here to the student strikes of 1900 and 1901, and I just wanted to read that first to set the scene. So this is an entry from the Encyclopedia of Marxism at Marxists.org. Mass
Have a good one,
revolutionary
buddy.
actions of students and
Good night.
workers.
I hope
Political
you sleep well, buddy.
demonstrations, meetings, strikes.
Thank you for
that
showing
took
up.
place in
I appreciate
February
it.
and March 1901 in St. Petersburg,
Maybe we could do
Moscow,
some
Kiev,
Don't Starve together tomorrow.
Kharkov, Kazan, Yaroslavl, Warsaw,
Or maybe I
Belostok,
can
Tomsk,
get some like
Odessa, and
Factorio or
other cities
Terraria
in
or something,
Russia.
and we could try it.
The student movement of 1900 to 1901, which began with academic demands, acquired the character of revolutionary action against the reactionary policy of the autocracy. It was supported by the advanced workers, and it met with a response among all strata of Russian society. The direct cause of the demonstrations and strikes in February and March 1901
See you tomorrow.
was the drafting of the 183 Kiev University students into the army as a punitive act for their participation in a students' meeting. The government launched a furious attack on participants in the revolutionary actions. The police and the Cossacks dispersed demonstrations and assaulted the participants. Hundreds of students were arrested and expelled from colleges and universities. On March 4, 1901, the demonstration in the square in front of the Kazan Cathedral in St. Petersburg was dispersed with particular brutality. The February-March events were evidence of the revolutionary upsurge in Russia.
little
The
girly
mass
here that's
participation
freaking
of
out. I
workers
don't
in the
know why.
movement was
What's
of
up, girl?
tremendous importance.
Nice here.
So that is just a little bit of
It's
background
okay, it's
here as
okay.
things were starting to heat up
Oh,
in
okay.
Russia. But again, we're still, over 15 years away at this point from the revolution and the Civil War. So is the situation in the U.S. comparable? I'll just give you this before we get into where to begin. I mean, we have had in the past in the United States uprisings. I mean, there was Occupy, which fairly well behaved. There's been race riots like Newark, Detroit, L.A. I don't think
This is
ever,
still the
though,
lead-in.
before
Okay.
have
I need to use the restroom really quickly. I can't just use the restroom really
there
quickly. Never
been
mind.
simultaneous uprisings in dozens of cities across the country.
If I get
as
back
we've
to
seen in
wood
2020.
cutting, I
things
will.
are falling apart with U.S. capitalism. The ruling class went into a really desperate tactic since George W. Bush, 9/11, the war on terror. Basically, that whole push to like remilitarize society and just go on a global raid of militarism abroad, austerity at home, police state at home, surveillance state at home. That whole push was like a pretty desperate attempt to keep the U.S. dominant. And we're now 20 years into that. And it's falling apart. It's not working. They're just using more and more brute force. More and more people, this year especially, have turned out to peaceful protest, whether it was for racial justice or, foreclosures or like whatever the particular cause that somebody might have turned out to a demo for. I think a lot of people this year got radicalized by the experience of like what they actually witnessed out there. So this is happening. I've been using the hashtag Revolution2030 to describe if we on the far left push really, really hard, we may have a moment by or, like at or before 2030. Things are changing so rapidly. It's very hard to predict anything. What I can say is if we on the Marxist left lean in hard, we've seen other movements, the Social Democrats in the 2010s, the Libertarians in the 2000s, do that for about a decade and then get kind of a moment, whether it's Bernie Sanders for the Social Democrats, in the squad, not really useful to us as socialists. It's very, very limited. The Libertarians,
They don't help
with
at
the
all.
Tea Party, obviously that's not even like
They claim
relevant.
to be
That's a
socialist, and then
socialist
they
endeavor.
they do
Those are
shit like
people propped up by
they like completely claim to be socialist, and then they like do shit like voting against the workers, the railroad workers, voting to make it illegal to strike as a railroad worker, despite the fact that they're getting paid like shit.
billionaires, horrible right-wing reactionaries. But the point is,
They literally said, sorry, I keep pausing this. They literally said that like they couldn't stop the they had to not strike because like if they did strike, our economy would go down. As if that wasn't. That's like the whole point of the strike is if their needs don't get met, then they don't do shit. But like our government was just like, no, you can't do that. Just keep working. We can't have this economy go down.
That those
Absolute
movements
bullshit.
had moments. I think we could have a moment too, and not a moment too soon, because things are falling apart. People are getting radicalized. Joe Biden's coming in, and already his cabinet that he's been appointing is like crazy militarists. He appointed the woman who did I forget what her post is, Avril something. She's
Okay,
the person
I'm about to
who,
win this match,
when
and then
the
I'm gonna.
Senate torture report was coming out, CIA people. Who didn't want it coming out hacked Senate emails, which is obviously hugely illegal. And then the CIA even recommended that they be prosecuted. This woman stepped in and said, don't prosecute the CIA agents who hacked Senate emails to try to interfere with the torture report coming out. So that's who Joe Biden is. That's what we're getting more of. Joe Biden tweeted recently, America is back. Well, I don't fucking want it. So anyway, let's go back
Base.
to a revolutionary moment.
Base
in another
socialism for all
country
moment right there.
to try to see if we can get some inspiration, some historical lessons, etc. Okay, so this is Vladimir Lenin's Where to Begin, written May 1901, published in Iskra. Number 4, May 1901, published according to the Iskra text. The source is Lenin Collected Works by the Foreign Languages Publishing House, 1961, Moscow, Volume 5, pages 13 to 24. Transcription and markup was by R. Simbala, and this is in the public domain, Lenin Internet Archive, hosted by the Marxists Internet Archive, marxists.org. Please go check out their stuff. Support them if you can. They have put thousands of Marxist works from all eras up online for free. All right, beginning the audiobook. In recent years, the question of what is to be done has confronted Russian Social Democrats with particular insistence. It is not a question of what path we must choose, as was the case in the late 80s and early 90s, but of what practical steps we must take upon the known path and how they shall be taken. It is a question of a system and plan of practical work, and it must be admitted that we have not yet solved this question of the character and the methods of struggle, fundamental for a party of practical activity, that it still gives rise to serious differences of opinion which reveal a deplorable ideological instability and vacillation. On the one hand, the economist trend, far from being dead, is endeavoring to clip and narrow the work of political organization and agitation. On the other, unprincipled eclecticism is again rearing its head, aping every new trend, and is incapable of distinguishing immediate demands from the main tasks and permanent needs of the movement as a whole. This trend, as we know, has ensconced itself in Rabotchia Dielo, another publication. This journal's latest statement of program, a bombastic article under the bombastic title a historic turn, or listock, bears out with special emphasis the characterization we have given. Only yesterday there was a flirtation with economism, a fury over the resolute condemnation of Rabotchia missile, and Plekhanov's presentation of the question of the struggle against autocracy was being toned down. But today, Liebknecht's words are being quoted, quote, "If the circumstances change within 24 hours, then tactics must be changed within 24 hours," unquote. There is talk of a, quote, "strong fighting organization for direct attack, for storming the autocracy," of, quote, "broad revolutionary political agitation among the masses," unquote. How energetic we are now, both revolutionary and political, of, quote, "ceaseless calls for street protests," of, quote, "street demonstrations of a pronounced political character," unquote, and so on and so forth. We might perhaps declare ourselves happy at Rabotchia Diello's quick grasp of the program we put forward in the first issue of Iskra, calling for the formation of a strong, well-organized party whose aim is not only to win isolated concessions, but to storm the fortress of the autocracy itself. But the lack of any set point of view in these individuals can only dampen our happiness. Rabotchia Diello, of course, mentions Liebknecht's name in vain. The tactics of agitation in relation to some special question, or the tactics with regard to some detail of party organization, may be changed in 24 hours, but only people devoid of all principle are capable of changing in 24 hours, or for that matter in 24 months, their view on the necessity, in general, constantly, and absolutely, of an organization of struggle and of political agitation among the masses. It is ridiculous to plead different circumstances and a change of periods. The building of a fighting organization and the conduct of political agitation are essential under any drab, peaceful circumstances, in any period, no matter how marked by a, quote, declining revolutionary spirit. Moreover, it is precisely in such periods and under such circumstances that this kind of work is particularly necessary, since it is too late to form the organization in times of explosion and outbursts. The party must be in a state of readiness to launch activity at a moment's notice. Quote, "change the tactics within 24 hours. But in order to change tactics, it is first necessary to have tactics. Without a strong organization skilled in waging political struggle under all circumstances and at all times, there can be no question of that systematic plan of action, illumined by firm principles and steadfastly carried out, which alone is worthy of the name of tactics. Let us indeed consider the matter. We are now being told that the, quote, historic moment has presented our party with a, quote, completely new question, the question of terror. Yesterday, the, quote, completely new question was political organization and agitation. Today, it is terror. Is it not strange to hear people who have so grossly forgotten their principles holding forth on a radical change in tactics? Unfortunately, Rabotchia Diello is in error. The question of terror is not a new question at all. It will suffice to recall the briefly established views of the Russian social democracy on the subject. In principle, we have never rejected and cannot reject terror. Terror is one of the forms of military action that may be perfectly suitable and even essential at a definite juncture in the battle, given a definite state of the troops and the existence of definite conditions. But the important point is that terror, at the present time, is by no means suggested as an operation for the army in the field, an operation closely connected with and integrated into the entire system of struggle, but as an independent form of occasional attack unrelated to any army, without a central body, and with the weakness of local revolutionary organizations. This, in fact, is all that terror can be. We therefore declare emphatically that under the present conditions, such a means of struggle is inopportune and unsuitable, that it diverts the most active fighters from their real task, the task which is most important from the standpoint of the interests of the movement as a whole, and that it disorganizes the forces not of the government but of the revolution. We need but recall the recent events. With our own eyes, we saw that the mass of workers and, quote, common people of the towns pressed forward in struggle while the revolutionaries lacked a staff of leaders and organizers. Under such conditions, is there not the danger that, as the most energetic revolutionaries go over to terror, the fighting contingents, in whom alone it is possible to place serious reliance, will be weakened? Is there not the danger of rupturing the contact between the revolutionary organizations and the disunited masses of the discontented, the protesting, and the disposed to struggle, who are weak precisely because they are disunited? Yet it is this contact that is the sole guarantee of our success. Far be it from us to deny the significance of heroic individual blows, but it is our duty to sound a vigorous warning against becoming infatuated with terror, against taking it to be the chief and basic means of struggle, as so many people strongly inclined to do at present. Terror can never be a regular military operation. At best, it can only serve as one of the methods employed in a decisive assault. But can we issue the call for such a decisive assault at the present moment? Roboche Diello apparently thinks we can. At any rate, it exclaims, "Form assault columns." But this again is more zeal than reason. The main body of our military forces consists of volunteers and insurgents. We possess only a few small units of regular troops, and these are not even mobilized. They are not connected with one another, nor have they been trained to form columns of any sort, let alone assault columns. In view of all this, it must be clear to anyone who is capable of appreciating the general conditions of our struggle, and who is mindful of them at every turn in the historical course of events, that at the present moment our slogan cannot be "to the assault," but has to be "lay siege to the enemy fortress." In other words, the immediate task of our party is not to summon all available forces for the attack right now, but to call for the formation of a revolutionary organization capable of uniting all forces and guiding the movement in actual practice, and not in name alone. That is, an organization ready at any time to support every protest and every outbreak, and use it to build up and consolidate the fighting forces suitable for the decisive struggle. The lesson of the February and March events, comment, in other words, the student protests that I was reading about, has been so impressive that no disagreement in principle with this conclusion is now likely to be encountered. What we need at the present moment, however, is not a solution of the problem in principle, but a practical solution. We should not only be clear on the nature of the organization that is needed and its precise purpose, but we must elaborate a definite plan for an organization so that its formation may be undertaken from all aspects. In view of the pressing importance of the question, we, on our part, take the liberty of submitting to the comrades a skeleton plan to be developed in greater detail in a pamphlet now in preparation for print. Comment, that pamphlet is What is to be Done of 1905. In our opinion, the starting point of our activities, the first step toward creating the desired organization, or let us say the main thread which, if followed, would enable us steadily to develop, deepen, and extend that organization, should be the founding of an all-Russian political newspaper. A newspaper is what we most of all need. Without it, we cannot conduct that systematic all-round propaganda and agitation consistent in principle, which is the chief and permanent task of social democracy in general, and in particular the pressing task of the moment when interest in politics and in questions of socialism has been aroused among the broadest strata of the population. Never has the need been felt so acutely as today for reinforcing dispersed agitation in the form of individual action, local leaflets, pamphlets, etc., by means of generalized and systematic agitation that can only be conducted with the aid of the periodical press. It may be said without exaggeration that the frequency and regularity with which a newspaper is printed and distributed can serve as a precise criterion of how well this cardinal and most essential sector of our militant activities is built up. Furthermore, our newspaper must be all Russian. If we fail, and as long as we fail, to combine our efforts to influence the people and the government by means of the printed word,
Oh, and
it
I
would
have
be
a grave
utopian to think
info
of
telling me how
combining
long I
other
have.
means, more complex, more difficult, but also more decisive for exerting influence. Our movement suffers in the first place ideologically, as well as in practical and organizational respects, from its state of fragmentation, from the almost complete immersion of the overwhelming majority of social democrats in
I wonder if there will be a actual
their
like,
outlook,
grave
the scope of their activities,
mark
and
outside
their
of
skill
Winter
in the
Todd.
maintenance of secrecy and their preparedness. It is precisely in this state of fragmentation that one must look for the deepest roots of the instability and the waverings noted above. The first step towards eliminating this shortcoming, towards transforming diverse local movements into a single, all-Russian movement, must be the founding of an all-Russian newspaper. Lastly, what we need is definitely a political newspaper. Without a political organ, a political movement deserving that name is inconceivable in the Europe of today. Without such a newspaper, we cannot possibly fulfill our task, that of concentrating all the elements of political discontent and protest, of vitalizing thereby the revolutionary movement of the proletariat. We have taken the first step. We have aroused in the working
It shouldn't
class
take me 15 minutes
a
to get there.
passion for economic, factory exposures. We must now take the next step, that of arousing in every section of the population that is at all politically conscious a passion for political exposure. We must not be discouraged by the fact that the voice of political exposure is today so feeble, timid, and infrequent. This is not because of a wholesale submission to police despotism, but because those who are able and ready to make exposures have no tribune from which to speak, no eager and encouraging audience. They do not see anywhere among the people that force to which it would be worthwhile directing their complaint against the, quote, omnipotent Russian government. But today, all this is rapidly changing. There is such a force. It is the revolutionary proletariat, which has demonstrated its readiness not only to listen to and support the summons to political struggle, but to boldly engage in battle. We are now in a position to provide a tribune for the nationwide exposure of the Tsarist government, and it is our duty to do this. That tribune must be a social democratic newspaper. The Russian working class, as distinct from the other classes and strata of Russian society, displays a constant interest in political knowledge and manifests a constant and extensive demand, not only in periods
I
of
could get back to
intensive
Wintertown in
unrest
like 5 minutes.
or
This
illegal
is how
literature.
it's working.
When such a mass demand
Almost
is
5
evident,
minutes.
when the training of experienced revolutionary leaders has already begun, and when the concentration of the working class makes it virtual master in the working class districts of the big cities and in the factory settlements and communities, it is quite feasible for the proletariat to found a political
Oh, that was so
newspaper.
dumb. I didn't need to go
Through
around
the
this.
proletariat, the newspaper will reach the urban petty bourgeoisie, the rural handicraftsmen, and the peasants, thereby becoming a real people's political newspaper. Just a quick comment and side note. When Lenin says social democracy here or social democrats, he's not talking about the reform capitalists of today. That was the name of the socialist communist movement in those days, so just so you're not confused by that. The role of a newspaper, however, is not limited solely to the dissemination of ideas, to political education, and to the enlistment of political allies. A newspaper is not only a collective propagandist and a collective agitator, it is also a collective organizer. In this last respect, it may be likened to the scaffolding round a building under construction, which marks the contours of the structure and facilitates communication between the builders, enabling them to distribute the work and to view the common results achieved by their organized labor. With the aid of the newspaper and through it, a permanent organization will naturally take shape that will engage not only in local activities but in regular general work, and will train its members to follow political events carefully, appraise their significance and their effect on the various strata of the population, and develop effective means for the Revolutionary Party to influence these events. The mere technical task of regularly supplying the newspaper with copy and of promoting regular distribution will necessitate a network of local agents of the United Party who will maintain constant contact with one another, know the general state of affairs, get accustomed to performing regularly their detailed functions in the all-Russian work, and test their strength in the organization of various revolutionary actions. This network of agents will form the skeleton of precisely the kind of organization we need, one that is sufficiently large to embrace the whole country, sufficiently broad and many-sided to effect a strict and detailed division of labor, sufficiently well-tempered to be able to conduct steadily its own work under any circumstances, at all, quote, sudden turns, and in face of all contingencies, sufficiently flexible to be able, on the one hand, to avoid an open battle against an overwhelming enemy, when the enemy has concentrated all his forces on one spot, and yet on the other to take advantage of his unwieldiness
where's my grave?
and to attack him when and where he least expects it.
Is it in there?
Today we are
Do you
faced
actually
with the
get
relatively
your-
easy task of supporting
Holy
student
shit.
demonstrations in the streets of big cities. Tomorrow we may, perhaps, have the more difficult task of supporting, for example, the unemployed movement in some particular area, and the day after to be at our posts in order to play a revolutionary part in a peasant uprising. Today, we must take advantage of the tense political situation arising out of the government's campaign against the Zemstvo. Tomorrow, we may have to support popular indignation against some czarist Bashi Bazouk on the rampage and help, by means of boycott, indictment, demonstrations, etc., to make things so hot for him as to force him into open retreat. Such a degree of combat readiness can be developed only through the constant activity of regular troops. If we join forces to produce a common newspaper, this work will train and bring into the foreground not only the most skillful propagandists, but the most capable organizers, the most talented political party leaders capable, at the right moment, of releasing the slogan for the decisive struggle and of taking the lead in that struggle. In conclusion, a few words to avoid possible misunderstanding. We have spoken continuously of systematic, planned preparation, yet it is by no means our intention to imply that the autocracy can be overthrown only by a regular siege or by organized assault. Such a view would be absurd and doctrinaire. On the contrary, it is quite possible, and historically more probable, that the autocracy will collapse under the impact of one of the spontaneous outbursts or unforeseen political complications which constantly threaten it from all sides. But no political party that wishes to avoid adventurous gambles can base its activities on the anticipation of such outbursts and complications. We must go our own way, and we must steadfastly carry on our regular work. And the less our reliance on the unexpected, the less the chance of our being caught unawares by any, quote, historic turns. So that's the end of the text. And as I mentioned, I'm going to go through the notes, and then I'm also going to have some closing comments before we wrap this up. Okay, so the first footnote, this is in reference to when he is talking about the network of agents who will form the skeleton of the kind of organization that they need to embrace the whole country, having many different positive attributes. So Lenin writes, "It will be understood, of course, that these agents could work successfully only in the closest contact with the local committees, groups, study circles of our party." In other words, they wouldn't be lone wolves. In general, the entire plan we project can, of course, be implemented only with the most active support of the committees which have on repeated occasions attempted to unite the party, and which, we are sure, will achieve this unification. If not today, then tomorrow. If not in one way, then another. So the second footnote concerns the section, this is actually just on the title itself. So Where to Begin was published in Iskra and reissued by local social democratic organizations as a separate pamphlet. The Siberian Social Democratic League printed 5,000 copies of the pamphlet and distributed it throughout Siberia. The pamphlet was also distributed in Samara, Tambov, Nizhny Novgorod, and other Russian cities. The third footnote is on Rabochye Dielo, when Lenin is talking about the unwelcome trends that he was seeing in Rabochye Dielo. So Rabochye Dielo, or the Workers' Cause, a journal with economist views, comment. So economism is the idea, Lenin would basically call this trade union consciousness later. It's the idea of workers just focusing on, better pay, better scheduling, better conditions, things like that, without any kind of revolutionary cause, or that just focusing on that would somehow lead to revolution. But in other words, it's the idea of just putting that first. And it's been widely, derided by Marxist revolutionaries forever. This was kind of the time period when that was really put on the record the most. So Rabochye Dielo, a journal with economist views, organ of the Union of Russian Social Democrats Abroad. It appeared irregularly and was published in Geneva from April 1899 to February 1902 under the editorship of B.N. Khrushchevsky, A.S. Martinov, and V.P. Ivanshin. Altogether, 12 numbers appeared in 9 issues. Lenin criticized the views of the Robochia Dielo group in his What Is to Be Done, again published later in 1905. I'm going to skip notes 4 and 5 because they're
I guess
pretty
that
much
was a takeoff.
devoid of much information. So Lenin is, when he mentions in the 6th footnote, the program that they put forward in the first issue of Iskra. This, the note says, the reference is to the article, The Urgent Tasks of Our Movement, which was published as the leading article in Iskra number 1, December 1900. Iskra, the Spark, the first all-Russian illegal Marxist newspaper founded by Lenin in 1900. The foundation of a militant organ of revolutionary Marxism was the main task confronting Russian Social Democrats at the time. Since the publication of a revolutionary newspaper in Russia was impossible owing to police persecution, Lenin, while still in exile in Siberia, worked out all the details of a plan to publish the paper abroad. When his term of exile ended in January 1900, he immediately began to put his plan into effect. In February, he conducted negotiations with Vera Zasulik, who had come illegally to St. Petersburg from abroad, on the participation of the Emancipation of Labor group in the publication of an all-Russian Marxist newspaper. The so-called Pskov Conference was held in April with V.I. Lenin, L. Martov, Y.O. Tsederbaum, A.N. Potrasov, S.I. Radchenko, and the, quote, legal Marxists, P.B. Struve and M.I. Tugen Baranovsky, participating. The conference heard and discussed Lenin's draft editorial declaration on the program and the aims of the all-Russian newspaper, Iskra, and the scientific and political magazine, Zarya. Lenin visited a number of Russian cities, St. Petersburg, Riga, Pskov, Nizhny Novgorod, Ufa, and Samara, establishing contact with social democratic groups and individual social democrats and obtaining their support for Iskra. In August, when Lenin arrived in Switzerland, he and Potrasov held a conference with the Emancipation of Labor group on the program and the aims of the newspaper and the magazine, on possible contributors, on the composition of editorial board, and on the problem of residence. For an account of the founding of Iskra, see the article, How the Spark Was Nearly Extinguished. The first issue of Lenin's Iskra was published in Leipzig in December 1900. The ensuing issues were published in Munich. From July 1902, it was published in London, and from the spring of 1903 in Geneva. The editorial board consisted of V.I. Lenin, G.V. Plekhanov, L. Martov, P.B. Axelrod, A.N. Potrasov, and V.I. Zasulik. The first secretary of the editorial board was I.G. Smidnov-Lehman. From the spring of 1901, the post was taken over by N.K. Kripskaya, who was also in charge of all correspondence between Iskra and Russian social democratic organizations. Lenin was actually editor-in-chief and the leading figure in Iskra. He published his articles on all important questions of party organization and the class struggle of the proletariat in Russia, and dealt with the most important events in world affairs. Iskra became, as Lenin had planned, a rallying center for the party forces, a center for the training of leading party workers. In a number of Russian cities, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Samara, and others, groups and committees of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party were organized along Lenin's Iskra line. Iskra organizations sprang up and worked under the direct leadership of Lenin's disciples and comrades in arms, N.E. Bauman, I.V. Babuskin, S.I. Gusev, M.I. Kalinin, G.M. Kurzizanovsky, and others. The newspaper had played a decisive role in the struggle for the Marxist Party, in the defeat of the economists, and in the unification of the dispersed social democratic study circles. On the initiative and with the direct participation of Lenin, the editorial board drew up a draft program of the party, published in Iskra number 21, and prepared the Second Congress of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, or RSDLP, which was held in July and August 1903. By the time the Congress was convened, the majority of the local social democratic organizations in Russia had joined forces with Iskra, approved its program, organizational plan, and tactical line, and accepted it as their leading organ. By a special resolution, which rioted the exceptional role played by Iskra in the struggle to build the party, the Congress adopted the newspaper as the central organ of the RSDLP and approved an editorial board consisting of Lenin, Plekhanov and Martov. Despite the decision of the Congress, Martov refused to participate, and numbers 46 to 51 were edited by Lenin and Plekhanov. Later, Plekhanov went over to the Menshevik position and demanded that all the old Menshevik editors, notwithstanding their rejection by the Congress, be placed on the editorial board. Lenin could not agree to this, and on October 19, November 1, New Style, 1903, he left the Iskra editorial board to strengthen his position in the Central Committee, and from there to conduct a struggle against the Menshevik opportunists.
Bro,
Issue
this
number
is not this
52
shit
of
again.
Iskra
Not
was
this shit
edited by
again.
Plekhanov alone. On November 13, 1903,
Get away from me!
Plekhanov, on his own initiative and in violation of the will of the Congress, co-opted all the old Menshevik editors onto the editorial board.
Let's go.
Beginning with issue number 52, the Mensheviks turned Iskra into their own opportunist.
Oh,
version.
man,
And
that was fucked.
We will see Lenin's criticism of this in What Is to Be Done, 1905. Keep in mind this stuff is happening back in 1903 here. Okay, so there are two more footnotes, but one of them is the thing I already read about the student strikes in 1900, 1901, and then the eighth is just another footnote talking about briefly about what is to be done. So that is where to begin, and what can we say about this today? So Lenin's main call is to have an all-Russian newspaper. Now you could say, where are we at with that? For example, in the United States today. Well, the thing to keep in mind here is that they already had an organization, which pretty clearly was the leadership of the Marxist, what they called social democratic movement at that time. We don't have that organization. I mean, there's the CPUSA, which apparently sold out long ago. I mean, they have a long history of endorsing Democrats and just generally being pretty useless when it comes to that's the only time I ever see them. I'm not saying they haven't ever done anything useful, in a practical way, but the only time I ever see them is when they're endorsing a Democrat. That's about it. I mean, I don't know. Somebody wants to defend CPUSA in the comments, go for it. We have PSL. We have Workers' World Party, which PSL is a split off of Workers' World Party.
It's a party of socialism and liberation.
I mean, they seem to be doing this kind of work.
I don't think he has said anything about SPUSA.
If somebody wants to comment on the Workers' World versus PSL split, I mean, PSL seems to have a much greater presence, and my understanding is that PSL broke away from Workers' World because they felt that it was not capable of fulfilling its duty and kind of broke off to free themselves of the constraints that they felt Workers' World was operating under. I mean, they have a high profile, and I have heard 90% good things about PSL. If I was recommending somebody to check out joining a party right now, I would probably point them towards PSL. I've said things about the Green Party. I think that there is local work that you can do there. Certainly, though, that is not a Marxist party. I just think that there is probably room for Marxists to work within that party is why I promote it. Same thing with DSA, who are definitely opportunist. I did a video recently about AOC that perhaps was overly optimistic. AOC basically gave an interview in the New York Times saying that, what she calls progressives, I mean the left generally, which includes social democrats or progressives, as well as, socialists and anarchists, had to some extent supported the Joe Biden thing. I mean, some of them did. I didn't. And that, the work that the squad is trying to do. I mean, and then she's saying basically in that interview that it seems like nothing she has tried to do has actually worked within the Democratic Party. Now, this could turn out to be empty words. I thought it was a promising thing for her even to admit that. And maybe it's too much to hope that it does Dem exit, which is, I think, the main task the left needs to do now. Get the hell out of the Democratic Party and stop propping it up, stop voting for them, and build a socialist alternative. That kind of, and by which I don't mean the organization Socialist Alternative, which is unfortunately Trotskyist, like many, socialist organizations in the West, including the United States. Well, maybe I had a request from a patron to do like a video or something on the Socialist Equality Party. I mean, to me, it's like, okay, they're trots. End of story. Like, I don't support them, and I'm not going to support them. Do I think Trotsky has had a few, laudable positions? Yes, but by and large, they are the embodiment of sectarianism. What is sectarianism? It's when you won't work with people with whom you don't have fundamental contradictions, or conflicts, clashes, differences in your interests. Trotskyists, as basically Marxist-Leninists, ought to be working with other Marxist-Leninists and working towards revolution. But according to Trotskyists, no, only they have the way, and like everybody else is wrong. That is the definition, the picture of sectarianism. If you're a Trotskyist, I mean, the Stalin thing, he died in 1953. We're a long way gone from that. Like, please, there are things about some of the ML movement today that I don't like. Too much social conservatism, for example. But we have to defend Marxism on the economic stuff, at least. And Trotskyists, I think, just need to reassimilate. If you think that that movement is too conservative or whatever, it's not getting any less conservative by your not participating in it. So, anyway, we'll leave that there for right now. But on this question of needing an organization first, and then, I mean, I'm not sure technology-wise that calling for an all USA newspaper makes sense anymore. There's a lot of individualism and alienation built into the culture. People are very predisposed and trained and socialized not to trust any authority whatsoever, even if it's socialist. So, I don't know. To me, it seems like the problem facing the U.S. is a little bit more fundamental, of needing that, equivalent of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, something that is really strong, really organized, really real world, with people who are capable of cooperating with each other in a sustained way, exhibiting solidarity, not just composed of exclusively online internet edgelords with anime profile pictures. Sorry if you feel called out, but that's the reality. Like, we need people who can function in society to some extent, who can actually cooperate with people and
100% agree.
Don't just form a cult of tough talking. That's not going to actually get us anywhere. So, when I recommend things like, get involved in your Green Party as a Marxist, get involved in DSA as a Marxist, obviously, I don't think that those organizations are going to be leading the struggle forever. They're not really Marxist organizations. But to get the skills, to get out in the community, to learn how to work with people, to learn to move beyond just, you got radicalized online, you watch a lot of videos, you listen to a lot of Socialism for All and other channels like this, that's tremendous. But you've got to actually get out in the world too. And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff going on in fringe far left communities is pretty fucking toxic. I mean, it's dysfunctional. It's just, it hurts a lot of the people involved, and it kind of goes nowhere at the end of the day. So, that's where those kinds of recommendations come from. If you really want a Marxist-Leninist option, again, my assessment, I'm not involved with them presently, but everything I've heard about PSL suggests that they're probably the place to be for that kind of thing, although they may not be in your area, but check it out. So the USA, it's anyone's guess as to how close we are to a revolutionary situation. We are certainly experiencing desperate immiseration. We're also seeing something I think is interesting. I mentioned earlier the kind of desperation, it seems like, on the part of the U.S. ruling class to resort more and more overtly in the last 20 years, under the guise of the war on terror and all that kind of stuff, to just sheer force, just the naked exercise.
Where am I
of
at on my other
force.
account?
More and more.
That's a better
In other
question.
words, the
Did I
US has
surpass
really
myself
burned
yet?
through its political capital globally and domestically, except for people like the maggots and whatever. That kind of soft power is shriveling up. The positive.
Oh, I only
image
have
of the US,
83?
I mean, in many places,
What about my
it was gone
other
long
iron?
ago. And then in other places, I mean, it's just been drying up more and more as the U.S. acts violently and exploitively, almost just not even trying to conceal it. So we may be seeing, I mean, the U.S. empire has been weak enough to be called the U.S. empire for the last 20 years. Kind of a new development where that was like a mainstream thing. Also, we're seeing, you know, we're on the verge of the world's first trillionaire being produced by the United States. More and more, like 2008, you know, following on the militarization during the 2000s. Then we have a major economic breakdown in 2008, a recovery that isn't a recovery during the Obama years. We have a kind of delving into like open sort of, you know, quasi-fascist movement and rhetoric. It's not as threatening as it could be yet, but we certainly saw a turn in that direction, that flavor with Trump, and the emergence of a vicious far-right coalition throughout the world that has just been coming out more and more in the past few decades. So the mask is coming off. What does that mean for the movement? Where am I going with this? Is that, you know, the U.S. famously has had a really hard time organizing sustained socialist movements. I mean, sometimes in U.S. history have been better than others. You know, the 1900s, teens, 20s, 30s were a time of like massive struggle. Then there was social democracy. The New Deal of the 1930s, which kind of, you know, there was a class peace or a class truce called. Despite that, though, and despite, for example, a strike truce, there was like a no strike pledge during World War II. There were record numbers of wildcat strikes. Workers didn't care. They were like, you know, we're going to strike anyway. Yet, ultimately, we got beaten back. We got beaten back by things like the Second Red Scare, McCarthyism, and the Taft-Hartley Act in the late 40s. We then see a decline of labor's power in the 50s and 60s, and then neoliberalism in the 70s and 80s, which is where we are now. But my point here is that the U.S. power was kind of expanding that whole time. It was expanding all throughout the 20th century. So although the world communist movement gave a pretty good effort, and many, you know, millions of comrades have fought in some capacity to improve conditions, raise consciousness, and just spread Marxism generally in the United States, they were going up against the rapidly expanding, you know, waxing phase U.S. capitalism. What I'm trying to suggest here is that what may be different now in the 21st century is I think it peaked. I think that the U.S. is actually on its way down in terms of power. The mask is off. They're having to resort to just naked force. They're clearly struggling to keep it together. People are just buying in less and less to the idea of an American dream or like the hope of being middle class. Like all of that is going away, and that was what that class piece of the 20th century was all about. It was like, hey, look, don't overthrow us. We'll make you middle class. Well, that deal is off. I mean, the twice defeat of Bernie Sanders is, you know, concrete evidence. That deal is off. So we're looking at a system that is really struggling to, you know, maintain legitimacy, maybe arrogant, maybe cocky, you know, overestimating its own power. But like I said, there was this long-standing question of like, why doesn't the U.S. have a left in the 20th century? You know, or why is it so consigned to the fringes? Why can't or like a real left get established in the United States? You know, not the Democrats, but like an actual, you know, you have a right wing, a center right, and like a real left wing option. The U.S., I think maybe was just too strong. And I think that we're starting to enter the era of the U.S. not being too strong. I don't know exactly where that goes, but I do know that we need to lean in. People should get involved in whatever they can get involved in. Clearly, there will be more uprisings, and I think it's unfortunate that the ones that we had this summer died down, but I'm sure they will be back. That is, you can rest assured those uprisings will be back next year because conditions have only gotten worse. People have only gotten angrier. People's lists of grievances is just multiplying at this point. On that note, I'm going to sign off. Hang in there. We will have more audiobooks and things. Thanks to our current patrons whose names are on the screen. And I want to mention that I have been thinking of different things to do with this channel because I don't know, I was trying to do multiple videos a week. I really can't afford to devote that much time to this channel. And I've been thinking about possibly moving to like a monthly or maybe a bi-weekly format. So if you don't see videos from S4A as frequently, it might be because I'm going to do them in like a once a month or bi-weekly like dump of, 2 or 3 or 4 videos. I'm having to do other things, and I just can't quite give it the time on an ongoing basis that I was. So anyway, also we did hit 1,000 subs on YouTube, so that's tremendous. Keep sharing the videos in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit groups, whatever it is that you use, Twitter, etc. But yeah, like I said, I think that S4A is probably going to go to like a monthly or bi-weekly thing. Of course, that doesn't preclude me from dropping the occasional random video when I feel like it, but it may not be quite as frequently as you've seen. It might be, again, more of like a once a month thing. All right, well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next video.
Oh God. I also like Marxist today. Let's go through our Socialism 101 playlist, because honestly, why not, right? There's nothing wrong with a little bit of leftist propaganda in the evening, you know?
This video was made in collaboration with Second Thought. We made an accompanying video over on his channel about why so many young people are becoming socialists, which you'll find linked in the description box below. So get over there after this and subscribe for great weekly socialist videos. Right, I'm gonna level with you. The world is fecked. Completely, utterly fecked. Young people living through the second major economic crisis of our lifetimes during the COVID-19 pandemic? Shite. Being forced to work in the gig economy or other precarious jobs with no contracts? Shite. Worker productivity increasing steadily for nearly half a century while real wages have remained stagnant? Shite. At the same time, housing, healthcare, education, and all of life's basic necessities getting more and more expensive and inaccessible for normal working people? Shite. No clear end in sight for this progressively deteriorating situation emerging from the continuing boom and bust cycles of our economy? Shite. Skyrocketing rates of mental illness among young people connected to all this? Shite. Impending climate catastrophe ensuring our days are numbered? Load of shite. So, you can see why I say the world's fecked. But the good news is that we can pinpoint exactly what's causing all these problems. And not only that, we've also got the solution. Welcome to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an explicitly Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist-Maoist perspective with short and easily digestible videos. If this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. Do be a star and give this video a little share around on social media, Twitter, Discord, Facebook, etc., as the YouTube algorithm's been going really hard on this channel lately for some reason. I can't imagine why a capitalist corporation like Google, which owns YouTube, would be going hard on an openly pro-communist channel like this one. It's a real head scratcher, but look, it is what it is. Do you remember all that fecked stuff I mentioned earlier? Do you want to know the main culprit behind it? The system of capitalism. And look, that's not to say that capitalism hasn't done some good stuff historically. It was a hugely progressive step forward from feudalism, but no system lasts forever. And if we want to solve the aforementioned problems, then it's essential that we recognise that capitalism's day has come and passed. Just like we couldn't reform feudalism to solve its inherent problems, we can't reform capitalism for the same reason. The day is past for patching up the capitalist system. It must go. It's time to move on to the next stage of historical development, socialism. Now I know what you're going to ask next. If we're trying to achieve socialism, then why the feck are we talking about communism? The big bad scary C words that we've been taught to hate all our lives. Well, partly because it's fun to ruffle the feathers of the right-wing establishment. But more importantly because, while generally well-intentioned, no other progressive movement has ever actually succeeded in meaningfully challenging global capitalism. Ever. We've tried the social democratic route of voting the right progressive candidate into office, and time again it fails and demonstrates itself as being incapable of solving the problems that capitalism creates. Why? Because every state exists to serve the interests of its ruling class. In our case, the capitalist class. As long as the capitalist state remains intact, no amount of piecemeal reform, nor elected good guys, will ever be able to overcome the fact that the system is specifically designed to maintain the very capitalist rule that's destroying our planet. The whole thing's set up for us to fail. It's fecked. Other progressives recognise this too. To their credit, there have been anarchist uprisings which genuinely sought to overthrow capitalism, and which have had some success. But the movement we call communism, specifically Marxism-Leninism and Marxism-Leninism-Maoism, based on the historical materialist understanding of social historical development, has progressed us further along the path to complete liberation than anything else ever has in history. Not only have we brought about real-life socialism, but we've also progressed further beyond that first step, into fighting back against the revisionist backslide into capitalism to maintain the socialist road and continue the advance towards a stateless, classless, moneyless society. Despite many errors along the way and the innumerable criticisms we must have of previous socialist experiments, the communist movement has still advanced the liberation of all working people further than anything else in history. And for that, in my opinion, it's worth carrying forward the torch of scientific socialism and the revolutionary communist tradition. To put it simply, communism works, and we've got 150 years of proletarian struggle to prove it. If you'd like to learn more about this movement, about working class revolutionary history, and about the scientific socialist path forward to collective liberation, then this series is for you. It doesn't assume any prior knowledge, so if you're still scratching your head after this video asking questions like, what is communism? Or what is socialism? But you're intrigued and want to learn more, then you're in the right place. We'll start simple with the basics of Marxism, explaining all the terminology and jargon, including a lot of the terminology used in this video, then gradually ramp things up through more intermediate and then later advanced level theory. We're going to analyse the problems of capitalism and class society more broadly, how we found ourselves neck deep in this capitalist heap of shite. But we're not just going to diagnose the problems. We're also going to map out a clear path forward to overcome them, in line with what's been uncovered through the concrete historical experience of working class liberation struggle, all the way from the Paris Commune of 1871 to the ongoing revolutionary people's wars being waged in places like the Philippines right now on this very day. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it useful in one way or another. If you're able to support this work, then please consider donating €1 or $1 per month over on Patreon, or a once-off donation over on Ko-fi. Links in the description box below. Thank you to Rare Hero, Cormac O'Brien, Dan Hunter, Red Corridor Raya, Christian Napalis, Daniel H, MLM in Practice, Comrade Romano, Jason, Michaela Schmid, Mamarius Hex, Ryan Hodgson, Donald Christova, Gabriel Bailey, Lepanion, Hugh Jass, The Rhineway Condition, Jess, Ian McShay, Soup, Pontus, Colin Walsh, Hagen Mitchells, Evan Crossland, and Boraku Gorilla. I wouldn't be able to make these videos without yous, and I certainly wouldn't be able to pay my bills. Cheers everyone, agus long fo.
Hey fellow lobsters, if you've ever read 12 Rules for Life, have you ever wondered how to talk to your kids about these ideas?
Communism. There's a lot of
How the
excitement
fuck
in
did I get a
term,
Tuttle
though
Twins
usually it's an
advertisement on my
insult rather than an
fucking
accurate
channel?
Political descriptor. You probably heard people like Joe Biden called one, definitely Bernie Sanders, and maybe even Donald Trump, somehow. But what is communism beyond this ill-defined boogeyman that you were taught to hate? Isn't it just when no iPhone, Vuvuzuela, 300 Carillion like you've read in the YouTube comments? Well, let's find out. Welcome to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an explicitly Marxist-Leninist perspective. Now, there's a lot of misinformation being spread about communism by those on both the political right and the political left. So this series seeks to demystify and clarify what it is exactly that we Marxist-Leninists and Marxist-Leninist Maoists believe in short, easily digestible videos. After this 101 series is finished, there's going to be an Intermediate Socialism 201 and then an Advanced Socialism 301. Now if this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. On that note, how are you doing? My name's Paul and I am an Irish communist. But what exactly do I mean when I call myself a communist? Frederick Engels, the magnificently bearded co-author of the Communist Manifesto, wrote that communism is the doctrine of the prerequisites for the emancipation for the proletariat. A theoretical toolbox that clearly maps out how to achieve complete liberation for all working people. And this isn't just by securing free healthcare or increasing the minimum wage. In 1845, Karl Marx wrote that we call communism the real movement which abolishes the present state of things. The aim is a fundamental transformation of society, which once and for all ends the exploitation of man by man. And we call the people involved in this project communists. But what's our end goal? To take away everyone's toothbrushes? No. Keep your personal property, please. The goal of communism as a movement, simply put, is to create a stateless, classless, moneyless society. That is to say, a communist society. Now, how we get there is a matter of debate among the various different sections of the political left. Some, such as anarchists, believe we can have a revolution and establish this kind of society immediately thereafter. Others, including Marxists like myself, believe that we'll need a transitional stage between capitalism and communism, a stage called socialism. But hang on a minute, what about communist states? Don't these communist states like the USSR and China contradict everything that's been said so far? Well, communist state is a term pretty much used exclusively by those in the Western world. These countries never called themselves communist states. They called themselves socialists. It's in the name, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The term communist state is also an oxymoron, given that communism is, as we mentioned earlier, a stateless, classless, moneyless society. So, yeah, nice job, Western academic big brains. Now, rather than just seeing communism as a kind of society that we might implement in this country or in that country, it's more useful to understand it as a stage of historical development. We Marxists divide history into a number of stages corresponding to different modes of production. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly we mean by modes of production in the next video. But for now, let's briefly look at the different stages of historical development that we can identify. The first main stage that we can identify is called primitive communism. Think hunter-gatherer societies. The second stage of historical developments that we identify is slave society, such as those seen in ancient Greece and in ancient Rome. Following this, we see the development of feudalism, such as in Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. After feudalism, we arrive at capitalism, such as in the modern United States of America. Beyond capitalism, we arrive at socialism, such as what we saw in the USSR and in China. Finally, after a full epoch of socialism, we will arrive at communism. But what does communism actually look like? What will life be like for the average person in the age of communism? In communist society, where nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each can become accomplished in any branch he wishes, society regulates the general production, and thus makes it possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow. To hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner. Just as I have a mind without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic. It'll be a society of abundance with equitable distribution for all. People will work as they're able and receive everything that they require, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Sound utopian? Too good to be true? Well, utopianism is assuming that the planet can sustain capitalism, a system which requires infinite growth on a planet of finite resources. Communists are simply realists who understand that the choice before us is not just between socialism or barbarism, but between socialism or extinction. Now, what exactly does socialism entail as the transitional stage to communism? Well, if you'd like to know the answer to that question and more, then stick around. We're going to be fleshing this out over the coming weeks and months ahead. Today we've looked at what communism means as a movement, an ideology, and as a stage in historical
It's been
development.
3 hours
For
and
more,
19
check
minutes.
Sources and resources in the description box.
I'm going to
Hopefully this video has
clear
helped
out
to clarify
this-
the term for you a little bit beyond the usual.
this
Communism
game of
was when
Wintertide,
big
and then I'm going to
government
take
and no
myself a little
food.
break because
Thank you for
I've
watching
been
this
going for a
video.
bit.
If you're able to support this work, then please consider donating €1 or $1 per month over on Patreon, or a once-off donation over on Ko-fi. Links in the description box below. Thank you to Rare Hero, Cormac O'Brien, Dan Hunter, Red Corridor Riot,
Once I come
Conrad
back, we'll end
Romano,
up back
Jason,
on the
Michaela Schmid, Mamarius Hex,
Socialism 101
Ryan
train, and
Hodgson,
we're gonna go
Donald
to
Crisler,
what is a
Gabriel
mode of
Bailey,
production.
Hugh Jass, The Brian Way Condition, Jess, Ian McShay, Libertarian Stalinists, Dan Hunter, Soup, Pontus, Colin Walsh, Hagen Michaels, Evan Crossland, Borkulu Gorilla.
So this guy came up to me, said I had to get my new work pants. That's when he jacked it from me. Look up.
Wouldn't it be nice if...
Alright. I'm just gonna... Oh, get away, get away, get away. Bam, perfect. So yeah, I'm just gonna clear this game, and then we're gonna end up watching this when I come back. I'll probably be back in like an hour or so. I'm still really surprised that one person asked me why I was a leftist and then just left without any extra dialogue. I mean, I appreciate the question. $11, $12, $10. This has been a great Wintertod game. I literally like did not get hurt. I barely got hurt. Cool. Alright, I will catch you guys in a bit. See you later. And thank you for watching the first half of this. 156 subdued. I did 31. Or I did 41 in this